Hey everybody, we're back with day 3 of the Blue Talks Amplify Your Message event. Been a busy couple of days, the last couple of days. I think I mentioned when we were on yesterday that Kelly and I both were part of the New Media Summit yesterday and Monday. So really it meant, like for me, my time, because of the time zone I'm on, it meant that I basically am starting my days around 9, on this around 11, and then going till last night. I think it was my time 9:30. I was on, so longer days, especially with 2 kids. And apparently, one of the kids wasn't happy that I wasn't home because I don't do a lot of evening stuff these days. But yeah, so it's been a busy couple of days, but a good couple of days. So welcome back to the Blue Talks Amplify Your Message event. Also, welcome to my co-host Kelly Ferdow once again. Welcome, Kelly.
Hi, so great to see you again.
Absolutely.
I love when I get to spend time with you.
Yeah, feeling is 100% mutual. And did you have a good experience on the New Media Summit?
Yeah, I did. It was really quite fascinating. So just to give people, like our listeners, an introduction of what happens is that basically people get to pitch to podcast hosts. And so I've done it before, and I wanted to do it again just to have that, that whole experience and, to perfect my pitch and everything. And one of the things that I found that was really fascinating is because they go from down to 12 people who become the finalists, and then they pitch off, and then everybody gets a vote. And what I found fascinating about the winners is that it was the people who got the first and second place had these incredible stories. Like they told their story in their pitch.
Mm-hmm.
You notice that about the winners?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And I mean, so for people that don't know what Kelly and I are talking about, it's basically I'm going to say an event that is designed to help people that want to get new media. So we'll call new media like podcasts, want to get spots on podcasts. And so essentially they go and show up at this event to pitch to podcasters that typically have been going for quite some time and have a lot of episodes. And so what Kelly's talking about is the pitches. Basically, people get to pitch many times throughout the event, but then ultimately everybody keeps the icons, the people that are the podcasters, keep selecting their favorite or the one they like the most all throughout. And by the end, that essentially results in a top 12. And so there was a top 12, and then they decided the top winners. And back to the story, what Kelly's saying is she noticed that the top 3 winners, what really stood out is they were all telling their stories within their pitch. And so that brings the backstory to it, Kelly. And what I'll say is I noticed that as well. And here's the interesting part. That can work for or against the person. So, yes, I noticed that yesterday. It was all stories that were the ones that won. But I also noticed by being there and being involved, I think this is like my 5th or 6th time, at least 5th, that people that tell stories, if they get too lost in their story, it actually hurts them. But if they know how to take their story and explain how that would be a good fit for my media, whoever I am as the podcaster, then they pull me in. So the story pulls me in, and we love stories, but you need to tell me within your story how it's going to appeal to my guests, how it's going to appear and fit in my show. And if you can do that, then I think you're going to stand out over people that don't tell stories. So I agree completely. And there was one gentleman who had this really cool background. He was a veteran. I don't know if you remember, you'll remember this, but a guy that was a veteran, a baseball player, and a bull rider. And I told him, I'm going to bring him on my show. And I told him the fact that he did those 3 things tells me he's going to have amazing stories. The only thing I think he could have done differently is worked one of those stories into his pitch. Because, by the way, he was in the top 12. So even by teasing us about what could be on our show, he got to the top 12. But I feel like he could have won, or at least been in the top 3, if he would have been able to say, thanks to my story as a leader in the military, here's what I can share on your show. And then share one tiny story. Because we heard 3 amazing things he did, but we don't know what the stories are behind or his ability to storytell. So I agree with you. Your ability to tell stories also always going to get you an audience and spots, but you need to know how to tell people how your story matters, like how your story is going to be worked into whatever you're doing.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you were an icon, so you got to be one of the judges, and I was one of the pitchers. So you and I are both on both ends of the spectrum. So it was pretty cool to be able to, to do that. And yeah, I found that fascinating that, you know, some of the winners weren't the greatest pitchers, right? Like it seemed like there were some other people that maybe pitched a little better, but it was because of their story that they got the top three.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right?
And
That's kind of how I felt. I mean, it was, you know, like their pitch maybe not have been completely polished, but it was their story that drew them in, right? Like they were able to get vulnerable, whereas I felt like some of the other pitchers didn't get as vulnerable as, say, some of the top three did.
Absolutely. I agree. And another thing you said there, which I think is important, is I agree as well that this is something I was thinking as people were pitching. And this is just, again, I think one of these things, it's always down to personal opinion, meaning what I think could be the best pitch or best presentation of a pitch. Kelly might disagree completely, and everybody else here might disagree completely. But the ones that I thought were the best pitches, it was interesting that and by the way, I'll back that up by the fact that it wasn't who I voted for that won. The ones that I thought actually delivered the best pitches, to your point, weren't the winners. They weren't the three winners.
I know. Same as me. That's how I felt too. The people that I voted for, only one person that I voted for actually made it in the top three. So I thought that was interesting too. So
yeah, and to that point, like I said, it really comes down to the fact that it's a personal opinion of what a good pitch is, but also, and just as importantly, is, as to your point, maybe I underestimated the power of the story there and own ability within the story.
Right.
So where so I'm going to check here. We're bringing on our first guest, and I'm messaging back and forth with him as well. So I just want to make sure we have it right. Okay.
Okay, but yeah, it was a fascinating event. So anybody that is, interested in, getting onto more podcasts, you definitely want to check out, Steve Olson's event, the Virtual New Media Summit, because I thought it was an excellent event. What I loved about it too is that even if you've never pitched before, Steve teaches you the model. And then you get to practice it in front of some of the icons, and then the icons give you feedback on how to change it. So I think that's awesome what he does. And I think it's great event. Everybody should be a part of it if you want to have or get on more podcasts.
Absolutely. It's a great event. Don't mind me here. I'm messaging with our guests that we're bringing on as well. So feel free to keep talking. Tell me what your other takeaways were from it.
Talking. Okay. So this is one of the things I love about Corey and I is that, when one of us has to do one thing, the other one's able to pick up and carry on. So, one of the things that I'm loving about this whole virtual world is just the ability to be able to connect with other people around the world. And that's one of the beautiful things about the, being on podcasts and everything. They're looking for guests. They're looking for content. And I've actually decided that podcasting is going to be one of my major marketing methods that I'm going to use to get my message out there in a bigger way and land more clients and make a bigger impact and, of course, make a bigger income. Right. So that I think is, really important since we can't get into live events. Right. So, podcasting is the way to do it.
Yeah, I'll circle back more on that later because we have a bit of a break between two guests later on. But I see that our guest that's coming up right now is in the backstage area, so I want to bring him on and maximize his time. But I will say, remind me, Kelly, to circle back to the podcasting and a plan I have for this book right here, actually, for the relaunch I mentioned that I'm planning to do coming into the new year, and podcasts weigh heavily in on that. But it's actually a good segue when you and I are talking about media. So we just talked about the New Media Summit. I think this gentleman might be familiar with that summit because it takes place in the same city where he's based, unless he moved since we last chatted. But it takes place in the same place. Twice I went live. It was in his city. And so on that end, talking about new media, this is a good segue for him, but also when we talk about podcasting, because it is new media, it's a good segue because this guy is an animal and a beast when it comes to crushing it and getting media spots. So without further ado, I want to bring on our friend Rob Garcia.
Hey, Rob.
Hey, what's going on? Kelly Ferdow, right?
Kelly Falardo.
Almost got it. I thought I recognized you. How you been?
Good. How are you? So great to actually, meet you.
Yeah. I've seen your stuff. You pop up on my feed like every day.
I know, and you pop up on my feed too. How's your dating life going?
Oh God.
Is it as bad as mine?
Going right for the jugular early in the morning, huh?
I know.
Oh yeah, it's only like 8:52 for you, right?
Yeah. To answer Kelly's question real quick, how'd Vietnam go?
I know. I've been watching your dating posts, and I'm like, okay, Rob doing just as good as I am. Maybe we have to start up our own club. I don't know.
Yeah, I think my next project's a dating magazine. I think that's what the maybe for entrepreneurs and coaches. Who knows?
Well, we're gonna have to collaborate on something.
I love it. I think there's something there. Kelly, you posted recently about doing a Zoom group for dating, like almost like a Zoom speed networking, speed dating type thing. And I thought there's probably something there. There probably is.
Well, and I have my book on the 5 different types of men on the dating sites and how to spot them.
I gotta go.
I was gonna say,
I don't know what kind of man you are, Rob. What kind of man are you?
One of the 5. I don't even know what the 5 are myself. So, so Rob, I said it was a good segue because obviously media is a really big focus of yours. When you put posts up, I'm going to say the ones there you go. Shift Magazine. Yeah, so he's a publisher of a magazine, but you also help people get media. I mean, that's a big part of your focus as well. And so as we're talking this week about podcasting, writing, speaking, and influence. And so when I originally we started, it was only going to be those 3 areas, but I said, you know what, it's got to be bigger than that because some influencers use all 3 of those platforms. Some don't use any of the 3. And it doesn't mean they're not influencers. Like you can use LinkedIn only. And actually, Catherine B. Roy, who Kelly, I know you know, she's the LinkedIn ninja. She's starting to use them now, but traditionally she used LinkedIn and that was it. Shay Rowbottom, who we had on recently, 500,000 followers on LinkedIn, and she doesn't have to use the other 3 at all. So why I bring this up, Rob and Kelly, is because then I realized there's a need to bring people on even outside of those 3 areas. And so I thought it'd be great to have Rob on to talk about media and how to land media because authors need media, podcasters, even though they are part of media, they still need media, and speakers definitely need media. So, Rob, maybe how we should start is to ask you just really quickly if you can tell us a little bit about who you are, and then we can dive into some questions around media if that works okay for you. And then we can stop talking about dating if you guys want.
Sure. So I'm a visibility and growth consultant out of San Diego, and I teach people how to go from experts to highly visible industry leaders. And there is a difference. So an expert is a person that knows how to do something. Maybe they've got a craft or a skill set. But a highly visible industry leader is someone that's seen all the time, that's recognized in their industry, and that is familiar and someone that you'll see a few times in the course of your day.
That totally makes sense. And so from your perspective then, in terms of the work that you do, and then I want to dive into further on the media side, but if we talk about that way, do you feel that the media gravitates to experts, or do you still think that the expert has to let the media know, I'm here, I'm waiting, I'm willing to support, I'm willing to jump in? Why I say this is because when I first started, I had so many of the old guard tell me that if you build it, they're going to come. And, and the speaking side, for instance, they didn't come. They said, build up the lemonade stand and everybody will show up. And I built the lemonade stand and I'm like, where's everybody? And so do you find it's the same with media? Like, is media one of those things where if you have a great story, they'll find you? Or is it that you have to reach out and make them know about it? Or is it maybe a bit of the both in your experience?
It depends on where you're at on the big picture. And what I mean by that is in the early days, you're going to have to figure out what your angle is. And so I recently had a client hire me and I did 2 Facebook posts. He has 10 interviews now, him and his family, just like that. And I attribute this not only to developing a network, like that's huge for anybody, but to figuring out what your angle is. So when you're trying to make a serious media plan, it's not enough to be able to just reach out to people and say, hey, you should interview me, or you should put me on TV, or you should, whatever. A lot of people do that and it doesn't work. What you need to do is you need to figure out value to audience. Those are, I'm going client level now, Corey, I'm going to hook you up. But those are the 3 words you have to keep in the back of your mind is value to audience. What are the listeners looking for? What are the readers looking for? What are they going to take away from this? And so that's when you're doing your pitches, that's how you have to approach it. Don't make it you-centric, make it audience-centric. So that's a giant tip right there. Your angle, there are probably 7 of them that are prevalent. And so if you're going to start creating your media plan, you need to sit down and say, okay, what makes me interesting enough to interview? In Kelly's case, life experience, right? She's gone through all the just wild stuff most of us would never have to deal with. In Corey's case, it's achievement or results. And so there's life experience, there is achievement or results. You wrote a book, you did a TED Talk, you had a 6-figure month. Statistics are really good for achievement pitches. And then there's demonstration. So this is more when you watch the morning news show and somebody's like, cooking something amazing and they set up their little impromptu kitchen and they're making creme brulee or something or poutine. That's an example of a live demonstration of your craft. Or somebody brings in a bunch of trained dogs or something. So that's live demonstration. SME, subject matter expert. So if you are known as a complete expert in something, like you're bringing me on today as a media expert, that's a way that you can come on and ask questions. But those are really the big ones, Corey. Achievement, result, lived experience, demonstration, subject matter expert, and then maybe like 1 or 2 others. But those are the big ones. So if you can fit somewhere in that category, in any of those categories, develop it, create a good pitch that's paragraph and a half long, and then just start writing personalized pitches to media hosts.
So, I mean, this brings up a follow-up to that, because this is something I've wanted to do, but I don't know how effective it'll be. I'm sure it'll be more effective than not doing nothing. But I have a whole slew of media contacts, media lists, and they're all scattered throughout the years of collecting them. And I was thinking this year I'd like to hire somebody. Now I'll explain what I mean by this, but I don't mean like hire a PR person. This is where it might fail. But hire somebody and have this pitch that's personalized, not to the person, but personalized specific to that type of audience. Mm-hmm. And then me and that person map it. Okay, here's the ones you're going to approach, because that's who would be personalized to. But have them do it and do a mass thing where they're reaching out. But the challenge with that is they're not personalizing it. The most they're personalizing is using their name. But they're not going to have the time or understanding of how to go, I was listening to your episode with so-and-so and you said this and I love it. Like, I'd be the person with somebody like yourself that would have to do that. I'm just wondering if you've seen anybody do that effectively. So it's almost like trying to put it on autopilot, basically.
You're talking about trying to create a media pitch plan on autopilot?
Yeah, almost like scaling your media pitch plan, basically, so that you have all the names, you have somebody that can send the messages, but they're not necessarily a PR person is the key thing.
If you eliminate the personalization, your acceptance rate is going to go way down. And so that's the thing with media hosts, is that they are hit with awful solicitations almost daily. And so you have to have that human touch. The first 2 sentences are where you hook them. And I always start with an observation or a compliment that is specific. Now here's what you could do. So Corey, if you have all these media people, and let's start, military guy. So let's start with the end objective first. What's your objective? Just to land a lot more interviews?
So backstory a bit is I've done the personalized thing all throughout my life. Never had a major, I'll go back a step myself. When I first started, like the first 3 or 4 years, it was like throwing darts against the wall and crossing my fingers. Like, it was really hard to get media. But then over time, whenever I was able to add certain accolades and stuff, it got easier. But the point is, I always personalized it ever since. So I've had a lot of media over the years. And now, just from a time perspective, because I know how much time it takes to personalize it, I'm trying to figure out a way to shortcut that. But the end goal, for example, is I have 2 things that I'm really focused on going forward. Blue Talks, of course. And then the other thing is a membership site we're getting ready to launch. So what I want to do is I want to basically just, whether it's articles, media, what have you, I would love to be able to just do, let's say, 300 in a year. And my point of that is it would be great somehow if it was on autopilot, so it was less time to get the interview. And if you got half the ones you'd normally get, it's still more than not doing it at all. But at the same time, I know, like what you're saying, the fail rate's a lot higher. So I just thought I'd get your take on if you've seen anybody do that successfully is really what I'm asking.
No. You absolutely, what I would do is just bring on an assistant or an ops manager and then train them exactly on reaching out, and just one sentence will make all the difference. That first sentence, just, hey, really liked your episode interviewing Richard Gere, just something personal, and have them listen to like one episode and then just reach out to them. Develop the angle though. So the angle is Blue Talks. So have them have like 2 or 3 facts about Blue Talks, either celebrities you've interviewed, you can drop my name if you want to, or cities that you've gone to, or revenues generated, or whatever, something that makes Blue Talks exciting, because it is an exciting service. And then just say, Corey has revamped Blue Talks, and he wants to come on your show and tell the story about how he elevated this and turned it into X, Y, and Z. That's a hell of a pitch, and that's going to get some in a second. So that's what I would do, Corey. I wouldn't automate it. There's some things you just cannot automate. You need that human touch.
And I kind of figured that. That's why I wanted to put it out there to you. And I have to say, here's the other challenge that I see. And this is, I'm saying this from the outside looking in, is that if I look at it myself, if you automated it and sent the pitch to me, so that's what we always should be asking ourselves, right? Because I'm deciding on podcast guests to bring on. I'm deciding on who to put on Blue Talk stages. So the question is, if it was automated to me, would I look? And we just had this conversation yesterday in the New Media Summit when we were in our private rooms about how we get pitched a lot, and by big entities like HarperCollins. And you would think, okay, HarperCollins sends you a message that so-and-so should be on your show. 10 years ago, this, Rob and Kelly, this, you'd be like, HarperCollins reached out to me. Okay, I'm going to put that person on, whoever it is. But it's a lot different in the podcast world. We talked yesterday, like I get probably 3 pitches from HarperCollins a week, and it's very rare that anybody gets picked. And the reason is they send me 3-page and 4-page emails, and they're like a half page down before they ever even say who I'm supposed to be interviewing. And by the way, because of that, I missed out on, and so did them, but I missed out on interviewing Stedman Graham and the guy that wrote the Book of Awesome. 2 people I would have loved to have on the show, but I didn't notice it until it got so far down. And then my assistant started going through emails. She goes, oh, did you see you missed Stedman Graham? And then I started wondering who else. But my point to that is those aren't personalized to me or my audience. They're just saying Stedman has a new book out. You should bring him on your show. Yeah,
and they just sent that out to 50 different companies and hoping that someone will take the bait. But it's a terrible approach.
Especially for an entity that's that large. You think they'd have one person that's the PR person that is going to go the extra step. I would rather have, to your point, I'd rather have 4 lines of an email, and that's it. And I look at it and go, so short, I got to read it. And then have a hook that pulls me in. Then have these things where it says, amazing entrepreneur scaled his business. And then you open it, it's like for immediate release. And then it's like, I'm just not that person anymore. I don't have time to read 3 pages.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've had
your take on that.
The very worst pitches I've had are from egotistical people that don't know me at all, and they just pop into my inbox. Hey, you should put me on the cover of your magazine. I've appeared on this, this, and this. And if I respond, it's always just no. And the reason is because there's no personalization. All they're doing is shopping for interviews, and they've made no connection, provide no value to me. And all they want is a one-sided transaction, and I don't do those at all.
To that point, and then I do want to circle back to more strategy too, but I'll say, and Kelly, I let you jump in as well, of course. But I'm somebody I know really well is relaunching a magazine, and this person's published many magazines over the years and been successful with them, and print magazine with print and also digital. And I sent her 82 columnists right now to write for the magazine, and I never asked to be on the cover. So for me, the thought of somebody reaching out to you and saying, hey, can you put me on the cover? And they don't even know you just blows my mind. Like, and I think she's probably thinking, why isn't Corey asked to be on the cover yet? But it's just, for me, it's a win-win, right? I'm bringing people to her that I'm adding value for them. Some of them are in our Blue Talks network, so they see it as, wow, Corey's putting me out there. He's trying to make sure I get extra media. And then she's saying, wow, he's filling up these spots so I don't have to, he's doing the curating and vetting so I don't have to, I can trust these people when I get on a call with them. And so it's a win-win. But my point to that, Rob, is what you just said, give first. I mean, I don't want anything from her. And we're, like I say, I think we're 82, but we might be 85 in. And she's like, you overwhelm me, buddy, because of that. I mean, she wants to get on a call with everyone to make sure they're fit. So that's 82 calls.
Yeah, one of them.
Yeah, and you're one of them. There you go, Cal. So, but at the other side, the way she looks at it, probably she needs that many calls anyway, so she'd have to put in the time. And it's probably better to put it in with people that are already vetted through somebody than somebody randomly reaching out. But to your point, Rob, and this is getting back to strategy. This is I think this is a lost art, is giving value first. And one of the things you're really good at is you're always asking me, is there anything else I can do? How can I support you? So I think that's an important part of media, is that we need to figure out a way we can get on the radar by saying, how can I help you versus what can you give me?
Yeah, exactly. And I've got a client right now who's a major crypto guy, and he's made like 30 crypto millionaires. He's legit. And so what I'm going to do today is send out personalized pitches to every major network, but I'm not going to like just submit to the website. I'm going to find a specific reporter. I'm going to do a personalized pitch, and it's a little time consuming, but it definitely pays off, and the success rate's way higher.
And now, what about in terms of the benefit to media? Because, and I know we're jumping around a bit, but when some people say, well, why should I even bother? Like, media is different than it used to be. And you can make that argument. For example, if you get on Good Morning America now, you might not sell 5,000 books in an hour, which at one point you could have. There's a lot more media now to compete with. So what are the main benefits of media, Rob? Like, whether it's called action or brand awareness or all of the above, or
you're talking about why somebody should have a media plan? Like,
why should you have a media plan, or why they should even care to try to spend their time getting on media these days?
Okay, there's a couple reasons. That's a great question. The first thing is, if you're an expert, the first thing is you're going to be exposed to new audience members that might not know who the hell you are. They might have never heard of you, but it really gets you out of your fishbowl, because all of us have our fans. We have our access to a certain amount of people, but it's finite, it's limited. And so when you go on exterior media sources, there are people globally that might really dig your stuff, and they're going to gravitate to you immediately. So that's the first thing, is exposure to new people. The second thing, proof of concept for your brand. So I've been interviewed like 170, 175 times. If someone is debating working with me, I just told them to Google me. I'm the first 2 pages because of all my interviews. And that's the trust factor right there. Is just being able to have strong brand perception, brand value, and then additionally, it bolsters your online presence, because you can take screenshots. Like right now, you guys don't know this. I took a screenshot of this interview, and I'm going to do a post on Facebook with all my interviews, all my screenshots recently, so that people will hire me, right? And this is proof of concept, because I'm here with 2 rock stars. But the point is, screenshots very powerful for your website and for your branding as well. So this helps your brand campaign. So a smart person can take these media interviews and repurpose them and package them into several different purposes. Amazing social media, exposure to new audiences, strong brand perception, all this stuff. And then also, when you have a good media plan, you start getting all these interviews and you make these relationships. Those relationships are valuable to people around you. And what I mean by that is, okay, so I know all these people that have podcasts now, and a lot of them have interviewed me. So what if I send them Kelly, this side? What if I send them Kelly and say, hey, you need to talk to Kelly and give her an interview. She's amazing. Now Kelly thinks I'm a rock star because I'm helping her out with all my connections. So there's a lot you can do with it for leverage.
Yeah, I love that.
I can just share something that happened to me recently. So last year it was Burn Prevention Week. The first week of February is Burn Prevention Week, or no, second week. So what me and another burn survivor did is we pitched all the local media in our city, and we said, hey, for Burn Prevention Week, this is what we're doing. And we went and we talked at a school, and he talked about burn safety. I talked about self-esteem and self-love. And we had the firefighters come out. We did book signings at the hospital. We did a fundraiser for the burn unit. And so Global Television, they came out and they filmed our talk. Plus then another TV station came out, filmed our talk, plus had us on their morning show. Plus We got radio interviews with the Ryan Jesperson show. Well, so here's where it gets even sweeter. So 2 weeks before Christmas Day, Global Television contacted me and Spencer and said, by the way, on Christmas Day, we're doing a special segment and we're announcing you guys as two of the most inspirational people of 2020.
Wow.
I know, right? And they showed our clip again and everything. And so just by us reaching out and contacting the media in our city, we were able to become named the most inspirational people of 2020. And so now, of course, I use that to get on other podcasts or summits or speaking gigs, whatever. I'm using that to my advantage. So free media landed all this other stuff.
You just nailed it, Kelly, and I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's also something that media appearances do, is what I call the snowball effect. So I always tell people, get 3 podcasts under your belt and use that to pitch other media, because it's like being the popular girl at prom. If there's, with the line of guys waiting to ask her out, because once you have a couple of interviews under your belt, it's much easier for someone to accept you and say yes than if you were a complete unknown. And so that's a prime example of using one interview to leverage several others.
Yeah, and the cool thing about it too is that what was I gonna say? One of the things I always tell people is that the media wants your stories.
Yeah.
They want your content. And so we pitch them, look, for Burn Prevention Week, we know you don't really know what to do, but here's what we're doing for Burn Prevention Week. And they look like the heroes, because now on Burn Prevention Week for that 1 week, they were able to feature us and put us on their morning shows. And they look like the heroes because they're doing something for Burn Prevention Week. So it was brilliant. It was brilliant that we did it.
And Kelly, one thing I'll add too is I'll ask you, and just, you don't have to answer this if you don't want, but I'll say it this way. If you don't have that on your email signature, you should. The fact that you were voted the most inspirational for the year, because, to our point, that's great real estate to put that out there. And I switch my bios, like you're talking, Rob, but personalizing it. I switch my bios depending on what I'm doing. So sometimes if I feel it's like it's a person that wants to have a little more fun, then I'll put the fact that I was nominated for a rock recording of the year, that I skydive, that I surf, even though I can't swim. But then if it's more of a business thing, I'll put that I was nominated for Entrepreneur of the Year. And the interesting part about media is most people don't ask who nominated you. And I was nominated by Your Holistic Earth, which Kelly's familiar with. It is a great organization. But what I'm saying is, even if it wasn't Global Television, most people just see that you were nominated for. You're not lying. You were nominated as most inspirational person of the year. So I think sometimes people get hung up thinking it has to be the big show. But again, if people see that you were nominated for something, it's to them. They're not asking. They're still saying Entrepreneur of the Year. Having said that, to segue a bit, one of the things, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this, Rob, but one of the things that I know as a podcaster on the inside is that when a podcaster, a fellow podcaster says, Corey, you should put so-and-so in your show, they jump to the front of the line. And I got to give a credit out, and Kelly, we had him on and you heard him say it, I think, but Mark Victor Hansen with Chicken Soup for the Soul. Mark got on, and 3 interviews I've done, and I know it's that now he's just programmed to say it. And all 3 of them, he said, if you know of any, and this is on the air, if you know of any other podcasters that would like to have me and Crystal on, let us know. And of course, I mean, he's a very easy pitch, but my point is, why aren't we all asking that? Because the truth is that if a podcaster says, because you could say to the podcaster, even after the interview's off the air, if you know anybody else who'd be a great fit for me to jump on their show and I could add value for, let me know. If that podcaster says, yeah, I'll connect you with so-and-so, your odds just went up through the roof. So I just want to put that out there, because if I see another podcast or a Rob says to me, Corey, you have to meet this person, I'm going to look a lot closer than somebody randomly sending me an email. So I just wanted to put that out there.
That's a great point. That's acceptance by association. And Kelly made an interesting comment. She said something about how journalists need content every day, and that's true. We forget sometimes, and a lot of times we write these dumb excuses in our head that, why would they want to feature me, or there's so much competition, why should I even bother? If you don't put yourself out there and make those pitches, they're going to put on a water skiing squirrel. Seriously. They need something every single day. So be interesting, get your story out there, and don't hesitate.
Love it. And so, as far as now, the focus around influencers. So, I know that's where you spend most of your time anyway, Rob. But when it comes to books, let's say getting the message out there, I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about awareness. But when it comes to, say, books or being a speaker, is there a different approach you take pitching them than, let's say, an influencer maybe doesn't identify as one of those things? So in other words, you have some influencers, as I mentioned, that are just, they're a social media influencer versus somebody who wants to be known as an author. Do you take the pitches and approach it differently, or do you pitch everybody sort of the same way but still personalize it to the person you're pitching to?
I match it with angle. So if they're an author, that falls under achievement, and I try and match their achievement with whatever it is they did. So if they're an author, I try and tie in certain events in their life that tied in with the book. So for example, I worked with Brian Hendrickson, who's a Green Beret who survived an IED blast in Afghanistan. And he released a book called Tip of the Spear. We featured him in Shift. And so I didn't just talk about the fact that Ryan wrote a book. I talked about that he was on a Green Beret ODA team. And every year since then, almost, he volunteers to go to Afghanistan as a defense contractor. He's there right now. And so I talked about his heroism, his early life. Like, he was one of those guys that just kind of didn't fit in anywhere. And so he just said, the heck with it. I'm going to join the Army and be a Green Beret. And he found his calling, and he's an amazing guy. But the point is, it's not enough that he wrote a book. I mean, that's impressive. I've written 8. Corey's written a ton. But he did a lot of things in his life as well. And so if you could tie in some of those things, as your personal lived experiences plus something you did, then you got a winning pitch.
And so I'll tell you one thing that was quite successful for us. And I mean, I'd love if you want, whether you want to dissect it or just give your thoughts on it. But when I was pitching the Book of Why, and I mean, it's been around as first a self-published and a published book, so it's had a lot of life. But when I was early on pitching it, one of the things I focused on is the fact that most people are unhappy at their jobs. I mean, we know that there's lots of studies to prove it. And my book's about finding your calling or your purpose. So I basically focused on the listener or reader is already struggling to find their purpose. Most of them are struggling with that. Why wouldn't you want to give them strategies for how they could start to find their purpose? And what if I could show you in a 5-minute segment my strategy that I use to help people discover their passion? So my point is that worked really well. And I tried to focus on the reader/listener or viewer. Any thoughts on that? Like, was that a decent approach, do you think? Because it's focused around the listener versus me saying, hey, I wrote a book?
Oh, absolutely. I've got the Book of Why. I'm in it. I feel like your work, Corey, it's interesting because you're talented in a lot of areas, but your centralized focus is kind of like mine, developing the life of your dreams, like developing a life that fulfills you, makes you happy. And so many people are so one-dimensional where it is, oh, I want to be a millionaire. I want to have a 7-figure company. Well, awesome. Why? Because I'll be happy. Well, no, you won't. If you don't know what truly makes you happy, $1 million is just going to increase your tax bill, right? And so I feel like it's a lot more important to figure out like what really thrills you as a human being and makes you excited to get up every day. I got good enough to where I could quit my job 4 years ago. I don't belong in a cubicle. I'm not really great around people, believe it or not. And I just wanted the freedom to do whatever I want to do. Yeah, I'm always the weird guy in the office, seriously. And I don't.
I get it. I am too.
I don't fit in with 9-to-5ers, and there's nothing wrong with it. I respect work a lot. I respect people that need that stability, and that's cool. But Corey's right. A lot of them are miserable, and a lot of them look at it like a jail sentence, and they just live paycheck to paycheck. They don't have any real passion anymore. They're kind of dead inside. And so hopefully, people like us can kind of show them, hey, this is what life is like. It's waking up when you want. It's being able to, have floor to ceiling windows in your dream city and a spiral staircase and do whatever the heck you want to do with your day.
Love it. Well, I'll ask you one other thing, and then Kelly, I do want to let you jump back in because we have about 10 minutes left, so we are starting to wind down, and I want to find out how we can reach Rob and how people can work with him because this is a big area for a lot of people, getting more media exposure. But we had John Lee Dumas on yesterday, and I asked him about what was the one thing I said. It's a big question, John. I understand it's not an easy answer, and I said, what is the one reason you think that Entrepreneurs on Fire grew so quickly, and basically you were able to scale it so easily, and that he's hit 6 figures a month for 90 months straight. He shared yesterday. Now, this is as somebody who was a non-celebrity when he started, and he shared his income report. You can see it on his website every month. So I asked John, why do you think that is? And I said, I know it's a big question. He said, no, I'm going to give you the answer. I'll tell you the secret. And he said, the secret is what he did and what he recommends other people do is find the one problem that you can solve better than anybody else. And in most cases, most people won't do the work to solve it because it's so hard to solve. And if you can do that, you're going to be one of a few. And if you do it really well and consistently, you're going to be a person that people flock to, basically. And I'm paraphrasing. So I said to him, well, what was the thing that you were solving? And he said, I couldn't find a daily business podcast to listen to on my way to work. And he said, so I figured if I have that problem, other people do as well. And he said, I burned through all the podcasts I loved and there were no new episodes. So he said, that's what my problem was. And so my question is, how do you think that factors into media as well, Rob? So if you can find the one problem that nobody else can solve and show people you can solve it, do you think that's a good way to pitch yourself? And is that a way to get more media?
Oh, absolutely. He's talking about niching down specifically. And I think that's first of all, I think it's really good advice. John was actually in the very first issue of Shift Magazine. Funny fast story. He was in San Diego for a launch party for his Freedom Journal. And I had decided I was going to, make this goofy magazine. And it was an idea at the time. It literally had no teeth. It had no physical substance. And so I popped on a name tag that said Rob Garcia Shift Magazine. And I went to the premiere. Everybody there is like Hollywood attractive. So I'm terrified. I look like somebody's uncle who bounced out of rehab. And I'm walking around with this name tag though. And everyone's super nice to me because they think I'm some important media guy. And at the time I had an idea of a magazine. Now I ended up doing it. But that's that's the kind of forward thinking you have to have. So anyway, yeah, he's absolutely right, because once you are known for what problem you solve and you become good at it, you can build your entire brand around that. You can build your social media content, you can build your videos, your posts, your ebooks, your courses, all that stuff in one genre. And the more narrow you can get, the better. There are certain people who are so narrow they've edged everybody else out. Tammy Moses for hoarding, and freaking Liz Germain for YouTube strategies, and Laurel Portier for Facebook ads. But there are some people who just pick one thing and they just put all their effort into it and become known. And that's a great tactic.
Well, and to that point, what he added though is he said, I was the only one. He said, so my first show was the worst show that existed as a daily business podcast. It was also the best because it was the only one. But he said, I'm not saying you're always going to be able to find a category where you're the only one. But he said, just make sure you're better than all the crappy people that are in the category, and go into a category that it's not flooded. Because the low hanging fruit is what he's talking about. Everybody goes for the low hanging fruit.
Right.
So I just wanted to get your take on it, because for me, it's the same thing as you just said. To me, it just hit me, and I'm like, it's. Even though I think we inherently know it, it's so true, but most people don't focus on it. What is the one thing I can solve? And think about Simon Sinek. I mean, I have a book about why, but that guy, because of his TEDx talk and how big his book went, he basically crafted and owns that concept of why you should start your business built on your why. Now, I'm not talking about your why in the same way as he is, but basically what he did there about how you should start with your why instead of your what, he owns that now. He's owned that market for years because he's the only one. And then what's her name? The one that has Spanx or whatever they're called.
Oh yeah.
I forget. Blake. I know she's with Jeff Isler is her boyfriend or partner. But anyway, she owns Sarah Blakely. Is that what it is? Sarah Blakely.
Yeah, Sarah.
So she dominates that market. Like, who else has Spanx, right? She's the one. And so yeah. So I love that, and I agree that if you're doing that thing, you're going to get probably more media than you could ever ask for. Like, I'm sure she doesn't have any problem getting media. Flipping it around, Kelly, I want to give you time as well to ask any burning questions you have about media with Rob, or share any thoughts. We have about 5 minutes left just as an update for people. So I'd like to give you some time on this as well.
Cool. Well, I have a couple things, but one is, so because Global TV named me the most inspirational person, how can I leverage that? I know there's some obvious ways, but I'm just wondering, should I do another media thing? Like, how can I leverage that?
What's your dream media interview? Local news, TV, radio? What do you want to, what's in your mind, what's the next evolution for you?
I think it's just more to go more global. I don't want to just stay local because my market is global.
Right. So I'll challenge you, Kelly. Here's what you do. Where are you at exactly?
I'm in Alberta, Canada. So I'm in the opposite end of Canada from Corey.
here's what I would do. I would challenge yourself to find 5 media sources in English-speaking countries if you really want to go global. Reach out to the BBC. Reach out to Australia, out to, Sweden or Germany, but somebody that's got, foreign country that has an English-speaking section for their media, and then just send them your pitch. Say, hey, I was named most inspirational person, blah, 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 and this is a snippet of my story. I'd love to share my story with your viewers and talk about my experiences. But if you want to build a global audience, there's 2 ways to do it. Either seek out foreign media or you make friends and build a foreign network. I can tell you right now, I can pull out a piece of paper under my desk. It's got 20 people listed on my Facebook that are all in different countries, and that's deliberate.
So here's the question to follow that up for Kelly, Rob. This is another side to Kelly, that you're not adding into that, I think, is that you have 2 separate things right now. You have your inspirational story,
yeah,
but then you also are now an Amazon bestseller strategist. And so the question is, which media should she be focused on? Because the inspirational story would make you money from a speaking perspective, but that's a lot harder right now. But then the Amazon thing, you're one of less. You're not like the inspirational side. There's a lot of inspirational people. So I'm just wondering your thoughts, but also Kelly, your own thoughts are important as well on this. But when you want to be known for, but I wonder if the Amazon one might help you impact more lives and bring you more of a business model around it.
Well,
Anyway.
and what some people have said to me is right now, because of COVID, people are looking for those feel-good stories. And so one of the things an angle I was thinking of is like single mom, something about rocking, the COVID, right? Because this is COVID, like 2020 has been my best year ever in my whole 10 years.
Mine
and
too.
so maybe there's an angle there with COVID and being a single mom and then, being named most inspirational person, right?
Yeah, it has to do with Kelly's goals. And so you're right, Corey. You got 2 completely different directions. And so it's up to Kelly to set her goals and say, okay, do I want to be known for this and use this to leverage, or do I want to be known for this inspirational story? And your goals, Kelly, are either going to be income-based or product-based. And so you got to go with, okay, for the next couple months, I want to either do stuff where I'm visible telling my story and then gravitating people to work with me, or I want to teach Amazon stuff with strategy and then portray myself as an expert in that field. And so it really depends on what direction you want to go.
Right.
Yeah, so I think everything always, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Rob, but I think everything always circles back to goals. People say to me, like, what you want, as you said, reverse engineer, what do you want as an outcome? Because people ask me, I'm going to say 3 times a day, and just privately Facebook message, should I publish or self-publish? And my answer always is, what are your goals? Because
Corey, let me stop you right there real quick.
Yeah,
You're getting that question this much, isolated a pattern. Why aren't you selling an ebook for $97 that talks about the advantages of both and how to do both?
Well, you know what? It's a good question. We actually have the solution, which is Blue Talks, because a lot of them, they learn the book business by coming in the book with us. And so that's sort of the answer to them. Like a lot of them, I'll say, well, where are you at right now? And they say, oh, well, Kelly and I talked about this yesterday. Well, I got my book almost written. And, oh, well, why are you asking this question? Well, I'm trying to decide if I'm going to go with a publisher or self-publish. And my first comment to that is, and if this is especially if I'm talking to them, because it's a lot easier to say this, but how easy do you think it's going to be to go with the publisher? Because Kelly and I were talking about this yesterday. They talk about it like, I'm trying to decide if I'm going to go with HarperCollins or self-publish. Is this your first book? Yeah. What kind of following do you have? Well, I'm just starting on social media. Sorry, you're not going with HarperCollins. You don't have that choice. I mean, you might be that 1 in a billion, but my point is that usually it's really more educating them on that side. But I still, and to your point, Rob, yeah, I should be putting something together on that. And Kelly and I should partner on that because it affects her as much or more. But having said that, I still want them to tell me, well, what are your goals? Because to me, it comes down to one key word as to why you would go with a publisher right now. It's distribution. They can get you in places you're never going to get on your own. So when people ask me that, I always want to know, what's your goal? Do you have a book? Like the Book of Why, the reason I went with a publisher is because ultimately, and I got slowed down because of COVID, admittedly, but ultimately I want to get this book in every hand I can get it into. And so my goal was to write a book like Think and Grow Rich, The Alchemist, Four Agreements, Celestine Prophecy. And those type of books need to be with a publisher because they can hit such a wide audience. But then you go something like my book of public speaking. What is the percentage of people that'll ever get on a stage? That's more of a niche thing. Can you have a book of public speaking that goes through a publisher? Yes. But I think there's a lot more reward to have it go self-published. You have more freedom. You have a back-end business around it. So again, I think it always still comes back to what is your goal? That's just my personal opinion.
I think what's interesting is when people self-publish, like Tim Ferriss, and their book gets really, really popular, they can literally pick a publisher at that point because, it's very rare, obviously, 1 in a million. But if you do get to that point where your self-published book becomes wildly popular and gets a lot of media, then publishers are going to try and pick it up when, in the beginning, they won't even look at what you're writing. And that's the world we live in. It's kind of funny.
Absolutely. And by the way, the reason I moved off screen for a minute is because you mentioned the Freedom Journal launch. And I just thought I would give a shout out to John Lee Dumas since he was on yesterday to show the Freedom Journal.
I'm still waiting on mine. Thanks, John. I donated to the Kickstarter and never got it.
Did you order his new book and you're waiting on that one? Or you mean you ordered the Freedom Journal and never arrived?
The Freedom Journal. So that was like 4 years ago. So John owes me an explanation on that one.
Yeah, wow. Were you, just out of curiosity, were you a part of his when he did the Kickstarter launch? Is that when you ordered it?
Yeah, way back in the day.
Wow, it's great. Well, I was going to say too, he shared this yesterday, and then we'll start winding down here. But he said yesterday, just if you haven't checked it out, Rob, I mean, he's a full disclosure guy. So we talked about the book business, and I said, how did you get signed with HarperCollins Leadership? And because I wanted to know, we talked about it the last couple of days, that what publishers are looking for now, if you're not famous, they're looking for your network, your list. How big is it? And so John's is obviously pretty substantial. And he said even 3 years ago, he doesn't think he would have been able to get this deal. But the end result is he had a bidding war between Random House and HarperCollins. So he signed a $325,000 book deal as a non-celebrity. And that's pretty significant in today's age. Guess what? He couldn't do that without a network or a following.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important point, right? You need to have a community. And, we've been talking the last couple of days, harping on it. Start building your community now. Dig your well before you're thirsty.
Yeah, it's great advice.
So, Rob, I want to ask you how we can learn more and connect with you further. But just before we bring things to a final close, can you tell us a little bit about Shift Magazine? Because you told us about yourself, and we talked about it loosely, but I'd love people to know a little bit more about the magazine.
Yeah, if they want to check out Shift, it's free to read. It's a digital publication, and the website is shiftlifedesign.com. So this year we switched to bi-monthly, and 2020 was a heck of a year. We interviewed Scott Oldford, Steve Sims, quite a few substantial names in the entrepreneurial community. So just feel free to check it out and reach out to me if you need some affordable coverage.
And it's shiftlife.com. And I'm going to post that in the comments here, Rob. And the replays, because we leave these replays up for about a week, so we get a lot of traction on the replays. So for those watching in the replay, you'll see it in the comments. Go look at the website. And I was on the cover.
Sorry.
What's that?
Shiftlifedesign.com.
Yeah, that's what I put. I probably said it wrong when I said it out loud, but I have here shiftlifedesign.com. And what I always do whenever I check to make sure, I go over because we're on the computer anyway, I go and paste it and make sure it takes me to the right place. So Perfect. This one here, when I paste it, it takes me to Shift Life Magazine and Brett Davis on the cover.
Okay, yeah. That's it.
So, so I was, I feel blessed that I was one of the, I think maybe one of the earlier covers. I get a chance to be on the cover of the magazine, and it was such a great experience. And you came out and profiled Blue Talks when we went to San Diego, your town, and we had a little piece in the magazine then. And I can only say good about you and the magazine. And one of the things about Rob, I talked about giving back. He's constantly always giving a shout out to me online. And, I think that speaks volumes because he's never asking for anything in return. So if you want to take, I'd say if you want to learn what Rob does and how he does it, just go over on Facebook and copy his ideas. Obviously, I say it joking, but it's true, right? Tom Ziegler, I asked him how he built the Ziegler following, like the Ziegler Facebook page after his father passed away, went from 250,000 followers to over 5 million. It might be more than that now. And I said, Tom, how did you do it? And he said, well, instead of me giving you a whole bunch of strategy, just go over and look at our page and copy what we're doing and just do that. I mean, I might not say it out loud, Rob, but people can still do it if they want, right? And they're not going to be you. You're the person that came on and talked about, you and Kelly talked about dating, and you put up about lizard people recently. I mean, they're not going to copy Rob Garcia. They're not going to be you anyway.
Rob, we're going to have to go on Clubhouse and do a dating thing.
Oh,
If people don't know what I mean about lizard people right now, they're going to say, what is he talking about? So you'd have to scroll down a while. I think you put that up, Rob, like 6 months ago. But if you haven't heard about lizard people, go check out Rob's.
I'm usually known for Iron Man, not lizard people, but you are right. I've written some prolific things about the lizard people. People need to know.
Yeah, if people don't know about lizard people, Google it and you'll probably pass out. But honestly, though, when I say all that stuff, Rob, it's meant in the sense that there's not going to be another you, but somebody can still go and learn and say, okay, look at this guy. He's always giving. He's always doing that. We shared it here anyway. I mean, what I'm getting at is you give value. You have a sense of humor that somebody's not going to be able to copy that. That's who you are. So, and we had Dada on yesterday, the monk dude. And for a monk, he's got such a sense of humor. I said, you know what? At the end of the day, Dada, that's one of your superpowers. Is you're taking a subject that most people see as it's got to be so serious all the time, meditation and sitting in silence and that, and he makes the funny out of it. He wrote a book about, what's it called, Kelly?
Something about Garcia or something, or
no, it's how to make your dragon cry or something. And it's actually a dragon that, for whatever reason, becomes a vegetarian.
Vegetarian dragon.
And only eat veggies. And then he says there's an alien in it. And it's like what do you call it? The Thorns. What's that show called? The show that's on Netflix that's very popular, The Thrones, something. Game of Thrones.
No, Game of Thrones.
Like a Game of Thrones or a J.R. Tolkien thing, and yet he has aliens in it and a dragon that is a vegetarian and all this other stuff. I mean, that's his sense of humor. So nobody can copy that from you. So Rob, I mean, we mentioned how they can get the website for the magazine info. Is that also the best way to connect with you, or is there any other place you would send them?
I have my main website, which is yournextlevelofsuccess.com.
yournextlevelofsuccess.com. Okay. Once we bring our next guest on, I'll go and pop that into the comments as well. Rob Garcia, my friend, this has been an absolute pleasure. I know we jumped a lot of all over the place here today, but that's what this is a coffee conversation. So I thank you for willing to jump into it with us, into the deep end.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Great to see you, Kelly.
Take care, Rob.
Always a pleasure, my friend. We'll let you run.
All
to
right.
be continued. Awesome. Going to bring our next guest right on. Darlene, can you hear us? Is okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear us?
That's a tough conversation to follow. That was a lot of fun to watch.
I don't think we've laughed so much ever in any of our.
Well, and like I said, I never know where it's going to go, so I just let the wind take me. And we had a bit of a buffer. That's why I went a couple minutes over, because after you, Kelly and I are going to be doing a few things, but we have a space between guests. So we had a couple minutes, Darlene. So if you go over a minute or two, if you have that time, that's okay as well. But Darlene, I guess the first starting point is welcome. And we always get our guests when we start off to tell us a little bit about themselves, and then we'll dive in, of course, deeper. But can you tell us a little bit about who you are and your backstory?
Sure. I don't have any problems talking about myself.
That's a good, you're in a good place then.
I think that a lot of people don't know that I come from a family of 7 kids. There's 6 girls and 1 boy, and I'm second youngest. And I like to tell that story because that is really where I became a word geek. Because when you're around a dinner table with 9 people and you're second youngest, and I was also the smallest kid out of everybody, you had to learn how to communicate really well, really quickly to be able to get your story in for the day, because everybody wanted to tell what was going on in their day. So I really learned how to communicate. I learned that you need a little bit of humor because people will pay attention to it, and that you have to be really concise with your words. And we know that we're in a society where people have a real difficulty with being concise with their words. And I have been writing since I was 4. And I had several children's books that I wrote when I was little that never went anywhere, because I was always told you can't make a living as a writer. So now the 3 of us, we can attest the fact that that is wrong. But I didn't write my first book that got published till I was 47. In between, I was a financial advisor and I loved it, but it did not fulfill me. And then in 2008, when the market crashed, I had my own financial planning company that got decimated. And during that period of time, I was writing my first book, which is called Lessons from the Depression, Eliminating Debt the Old-Fashioned Way, which I was planning to use as a financial planner, as your nice little book that you can pass on for credibility. And it ended up being that in 2009, I decided to leave the financial industry and take a shot at writing this book and publishing it. So I was really lucky that I got a chance to talk to some pretty high-level authors who all encouraged me to self-publish versus publish. And I heard the last bit that you were talking there about having to decide what your end game is. And for me, it was to get my book in the hands of as many people as I possibly could. But I had no experience whatsoever in marketing at all for books. I was like as blind could be. And, you know, and I think Kelly, you were talking in yesterday about, you know, selling to one. You and Charmaine were having the conversation about selling to one versus to 10 or to 100. When you're selling one-to-one, it gets really tiring. So I started to think, how can I sell hundreds and thousands? And I went after the credit counselors, all of the firms and the banks, and started to sell my book directly to them. And it became a bestseller without me even knowing what I was doing. And that's led to where I am today, because people ask, how did you get your book out there? How did you market it? And a lot of entrepreneurs want to write their book and tell their story, but I learned that they couldn't even articulate to me who they are, what they do, whom they serve, and why they were differing. I'm like, how can you market a book when you don't even know the core essence of your messaging for your business? And that's why I started the Clarity Project. And that brings me to today.
Amazing. And I have to say, I posted your book link for Amazon in the comments here. And I took a peek at it, Darlene, and the cover, I love it. I mean, I have to say, it feels like, I mean, I'm kind of biased because I love the feeling of like the old sort of cover design that looks timeless. And I find that your book has that look. And I mean, especially it fits because it says the old fashioned way.
Yes.
And yeah, so that was intentional, I assume.
It was very intentional.
So
and for me,
do you have your books? You can show it to everybody.
This is the first one.
Yeah,
so this is the one that I wrote that I sold to best-selling status and moved away from financial planning forever. And then going through everything in 2008 and 2009, I actually went through this spiritual rediscovery and ended up downloading a book. I always say I didn't write it. Downloaded a book. It's called The Promise. And it's really about a woman that goes through a spiritual challenge and how she comes out the other side. And it's really about following your passion. And that's really the genesis of all I do is I want everyone to be on their divine path and following their passion, because anything else, there's just not the fulfillment in there. There's not that satisfaction. And so after I wrote The Promise, almost simultaneously, I wrote a blog about my sister who passed away, and it was she passed away from cancer. And we do Run for the Cure every year, CIBC Run for the Cure. For those of you who are outside of Canada, it happens every fall. And the first time I went without my sister, I had this story and I wrote it as a blog, and it ended up being circulated across the world. It was read in 8 or 9 different countries. Thousands of people were reading it. And it was called Finding Your Faith at the Run for the Cure. And I had met Mark Victor Hansen. I think we've had this discussion before, Corey, because I know you're a big Jack Canfield fan. And I had met him at a conference, and he said, we're always looking for writers. Like, just check in on the website. It'll tell you what we need to have writing about. So for about a year, I'd check in every month or so. And it was like about cats, which I'm not a cat person, or nurses or Americans. And I didn't fit. And about 2 weeks after I wrote the blog, I got an email that said, looking for writers for Finding Your Faith. And I just had goosebumps. I knew right away that the blog was going to be in the book. I didn't know why I knew that. I sent it off, and it ended up being the first chapter, which Jack Canfield says is the most important because that's what people read. But it's amazing when you follow your passion. And it's a very vulnerable story. If you want to read it, you can go on my website, darlenebutts.com. I actually have the link to the website. You don't have to buy the whole anthology if you don't want to. And it was a very vulnerable story. And I thought about not sharing it because I felt like, is it too heavy? Is it too sad? Do people really want to read this stuff? And I followed my gut, and I'm so glad I did. And I wonder how many people out there have this story that can really change lives and make a difference, but they're too scared of what other people will think. So I hope that gives them courage to be able to write the stories that can really change the world.
I love it. And I think that's so cool that, just you've been on like just over 5 minutes and you've already talked about synchronicity. You knew as soon as you saw it that this was the time with the book. And then I also loved one of the nuggets that you dropped that I glossed over. And we had yesterday Charmaine Hammond on, who talked about this.
I love Charmaine.
Okay, awesome stuff. Good shout out. And I talked about it to a smaller degree, but you mentioned about with the book, you decided you didn't want to sell it one at a time, one person at a time because of how long that takes. And then so you went to a specific niche and said, this niche could buy multiple copies of the book. And so I love that you talked about that, because one of the things that people are going to find if they're listening to us and they're just starting their book journey is it's a lot harder to sell one copy at a time than anybody thinks. Everybody thinks I got 500 family members and friends that'll buy my book, until they have to find those family members and friends. They seem to disappear somewhat quickly. And I can tell you as somebody that at this point, and this is over a number of years, I'm sure it's the same for you when you mentioned that you sold many copies at the time, but I've sold thousands and thousands of books. And what I can tell you is it's hard to sell books. And it's really hard to sell books one at a time.
Yes.
And so if you can find a way to shortcut that, which, and this is a whole separate conversation, but it makes the case as to why you should consider whether you should be writing a niche book for a niche audience or whether you should be writing a book for a lot of people, because everybody seems to want to write the book for everybody. But to your point about the financial industry, it's a lot easier to market a book to one industry that understands why they need this book than it is to market it to your family and friends and people on Facebook that don't necessarily need the book. And they're just buying it because they're your friend.
And I agree. And I can tell you, and I remember these days when you sell your first couple of books, it's exciting. You don't care about the one-to-one. You're just like, someone paid me money for my book. And it's so exciting. And then after a while, it just gets frustrating. I really took time to figure out what industry could really utilize this book. When I decided on, because I had a banking background, banks, and then credit counselors, I didn't stop there. What I did was I tried to figure out how they would finance it. Where would the money come from? Who's the person that I need to talk to? So like with credit counseling firms, you have to talk to the director because they are the ones with the budget. I also found if you can find out when their year end is, if they have money left over, they have to spend it or they lose it. So I started to ask, when's your year end? How far along are you? Do you have money left in the budget? Let's come up with a deal to use up the last of your funds that you can give to your clients. So you can't just say, okay, I want to sell it to banks. You have to figure out who in a bank is going to listen to you and have the capability of actually buying the copies from you. So it's really important for you to dig really deep and find that out. And sometimes it might take you 4 or 5 phone calls of research just to find that out. It might be no's, but if you listen, you'll hear why it's a no and what you have to do next time. So if you want to sell to corporations, organizations, figure out what the system and how it works, and then utilize it to your advantage. So it's a win-win for everybody.
I love this discussion we're having because a lot of times people think that the only way to sell their books is on Amazon or on social media. And that's one of the things that you and both Charmaine are talking about is how we have to start thinking outside of the box. And if we really want to sell books, we don't need to rely on social media and Amazon. We can sell to corporations. We can sell to small businesses. We can sell to, our sponsorship or whatever, right? And so I love this conversation we're having. It's awesome.
You really have to think outside the box. And a lot of people think the hardest part is writing the book. And I say, no, it's not. It's afterwards. It's getting it in people's hands because even though I have a large family, they can only take me so far. And so I think it's really when you're writing the book is I would already be starting to think about who am I marketing to and asking questions about format and what do your clients need the most. I was very lucky in that Lessons from the Depression is creative fiction. It is a story about a family that gets into financial difficulty and how they get out using the advice of their grandmother who lived through the Great Depression. So it is an easy read. I've had 15-year-olds read it. I've had 95-year-olds read it. So I made it generic enough and interesting enough that it fit a large audience in that niche, if you know what I'm saying. So it wasn't specifically for seniors. It wasn't specifically for children. It really did cross the gamut because I was dealing with multi-generations in a family. So it's also thinking that way is if you need a niche, but what does that niche need? And then kind of writing towards that.
Yeah, I love that. And I'll tell you, I've struggled with the exact opposite scenario with, again, the speaking book, no problem. Finding who I'm supposed to be writing it for, finding who the audience is, all that stuff is easy. Because first of all, less than 1% of people will ever get on a stage. And then there's, whatever, maybe 5% that think they might, but they're not sure. But it's a very targeted audience. So if I, for example, if I'm a member of, which I am, networking groups where it's influencers, many of them who speak on a stage, well, obviously that's a good market for the book. But to go to, let's say, on a Good Morning show and talk about public speaking, it could fit, but you're then going to try to get 100,000 people to try to find the 100 people that would ever get the book. And so that book is easier to know who to focus and target. The book I just showed you guys, this book here has been a challenge and an opportunity all at the same time, because the market is big. But it's sad the reason the market's big. The market is big because so many people hate their jobs, and a lot of people don't like where they're at in their life. So for people that want to find their purpose, that's a huge market. So that's why I know it's a book that more meant to be marketed like, again, Chicken Soup for the Soul, perhaps. Not, and I don't mean for the golfer soul. I mean the main one, or like I said, Celestine or the Four Agreements. Even though nobody knew how big those books were going to get, those are books that can be for anybody. Anybody can learn the principles of the Four Agreements and use them. But again, I think that's the thing you have to decide early on, because I will tell you, this book has had so many great moments because I've had people reach out and say, I was just about to quit my business until I read this part of your book. But at the very same time, it's so hard, because how do you reach that audience and know where to go? Because it's so wide. Does that make sense? It's so, it's so hard to decide where you focus your energy.
And so my advice to you is the same advice I give to clients who are trying to sell their product to every man, woman, child in the world. Even if it fits, even if it can help, let's say that it's skincare that can actually help babies to 95-year-olds. You still need to market to a niche, because if you try to talk to everyone at the same time, nobody's going to hear you. So it just, for you, is just to put the intention behind the book of who you wanted to reach. I think would make all of the difference for you. But it's hard because it's like your baby and you want to share it with everyone. You know the power behind it and you're excited to be able to share it and help people. But I feel like that focus gets fractured, and then it's really difficult for you to find the lane. And so that's my suggestion for anyone, whether it's business or a book, is even if it can help every man, woman, and child in the world, don't talk to every man, woman, and child in the world. Talk to who you need to. And so for both of my books, it really is for my main target audience is women between the ages of 35 and 45. Both main characters are in that age group, in that situation. And so I marketed it to the credit counseling firms who told me their target market is like the 35 to 45, where they have their school debt, and then they start getting a mortgage, and then they start buying stuff for their kids, and then there's hockey, and all of a sudden they're in trouble. So it was a match. And I believe part of that was my intention and finding the intention that matched it.
It's interesting you say that because I've been starting to think about where should I focus the energy for the book, in two areas. And, this is as much credit to my girlfriend as me, because she was really, in a lot of ways, the feedback and the sounding board as I was writing the book. But her background is she's a former addict. So she's been clean. I think it just passed 6 years. And so she's really passionate about helping other addicts. And she said, this is the book I needed when I was in my addiction. And so she wants to focus on treatment centers. I mean, it's getting the time to do it, but that's a complete, very focused market. And then that also made me realize that mental health is another area that I could focus on. So I see those as two areas where I could go really deep. And obviously sadly, there's no shortage in those two markets, but it still allows you to be very focused. Like a treatment center, people that go into treatment, a lot of times are spending $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a year. So what would it be for the treatment center to say, we're going to give you this book that could really help you at this time, and add that in, at $10 a book, because they're going to get a cheaper price if they buy them in volume. So I've been thinking about that as to be a little more focused, because it is challenging to go, it should be everywhere. It should be in the Oprah Book Club. I mean, every book, we all think every book should be in the Oprah Book Club. It's getting it there is the bigger challenge. But yeah, I'm glad you said that though, Darlene, because this is something that I've been really resting on lately is how am I going to bring the market down smaller so that eventually it can get wider? Like there's nothing wrong with going, okay, this is my focus right now until I'm done with that market completely. I've saturated it. Then I can go to this market and it gives you a place to focus. But it also reminds us that a book doesn't have to last only a week because that's our new challenge is when people want to make a bestsellers list, a lot of times they get on the bestsellers list and then they're like, did it, I'm done. And maybe the goal was only to become a best-selling author. If that's it, then that's fine. But if your goal is to impact people with your books over the long haul, it's great to be the best-selling author, but now what is your strategy for keeping those books going?
Absolutely. And I like what you said, because my analogy is you got to win in one lane before you can hop to another. And so many people, and they understand this analogy because I say, if you're in 100-meter race and you're hopping from lane to lane, you will never win. There's just no way. But if you're in your own lane and you run as fast as you can, you have a chance at winning. So win in your lane, then you can move over to the next lane. And I think it's easier to get well known, to get press, to get some motivation behind you and some support behind you when you are winning in your lane, even if it's a very narrow lane. And then that can radiate out to the other lanes where you want to go next. So instead of, looking at, again, trying to sell your book to the whole world, really the money's in the niche. I can't say that enough. It makes so much difference. And I have proof with my clients, with myself, is choose your lane, win it, and then go on the next lane.
I so love that. And Darlene, I want to ask you as well, since we're on this book topic, which is fine. I mean, like I said, it's a conversation that's fluid. So wherever it goes, it goes. But the book itself, one of the other things that immediately pulled me in as soon as you shared the details about your book is the title. And so we've been talking with this the last couple of days. I think we talked mostly with Harry Paul, who wrote the Fish book. So co-wrote Fish, the 6 million copies sold, spawned I think 3 or 4 books in the series, and all of his books he spends a lot of time thinking about the title. And he gave us examples of titles that here's why this title worked, here's why that title worked. Like what was it? I think the 1 Minute Manager he talked about.
Yeah, I did.
And he worked for Ken Blanchard for quite a while on the book side of things. And there was another title I forget that Ken wanted to use, and he said, don't use this title. And then the book didn't sell well. And he said, I'm not saying it's only the title, but I think that played a part. And so I bring this all up because you have a great title with that book. It makes me think of that. Your book would have, crushed it. If it came out a week before Think and Grow Rich, you would have taken their market, because really Think and Grow Rich, the reason that worked so well, in my opinion, is because he launched it during the Depression when everybody said, I need to get money. So rich was such a great keyword. But if you read that book, it's not about getting rich financially. It's about getting rich as a whole person. And so I love Lessons from the Depression would fit so well with that timeline, but it fits so well at any time. And so my question of all that is, how'd you come up with the title? And I don't probably have to ask, but I'm assuming it was intentional.
So I'll answer the second question because it's much easier. Yes, it was intentional. I actually had a lot of different titles that I tried on with different people. So don't be afraid to just put it out there and see. And one of the things with Lessons from the Depression, it was my favorite, and it has a little bit of alliteration in it. So I like that too, because I'm a word geek. But I found that there was a couple of people who misunderstood the depression part of it. They were thinking depression as in mental illness, not in the depression. So I kind of went back again and to another group of people to see how many people would pick up on that. And there was nobody. So I took that as a sign that I would be okay, because I really wanted it. We were coming out of the Great Recession. Mm-hmm. And that's why I wanted to pull in the depression, because I wanted people to equate the two and understand that this family was learning the money principles from their grandmother had gone through the last time we had this major worldwide economic depression. And I wanted to tie the two together. But I had to make sure that the tagline really made it clear what it was about. So if it was just lessons from the depression, I think it would have been misunderstood, and there'd be people thinking, okay, I'm going to learn how to deal with depression. It was the tagline that was really important. And it took me so long to come up with a tagline that was short enough to be a tagline, but was powerful enough to explain what the book was about. So there was a lot that went into the title. I'm not going to lie.
With the tagline. With the tagline. What was the tagline?
It's eliminating debt the old-fashioned way.
Right. Okay, cool. Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
And so, Darlene, I'm going to put this out there. It just popped into my head, so I'm going to put it out there now. We did this yesterday when we had Woody on. I'm going to put this out there so people keep me honest with this. I'm going to grab 2 copies of the book that we can gift to people as we go through this. And usually what we do, I haven't really announced it, but usually what we do is when people comment, that's how they get in the draw for the books. And if I always look at it like, we say it a couple times, but if you comment by accident, get in, great. If you hear us say or you heard it last time and you don't comment, then it's sort of on you. But I want to do that. So right now, Woody, I said I would buy 2 copies of his new book, which is, by the way, a financial book as well, isn't it, Kelly? Yeah, it's a financial book. Woody's the Rockstar book.
Yeah, the Rockstar, his second book is financial.
Yeah, and then he said he would match that and do 2 audios. And I'm not. And by the way, I don't want you to match this. I'm just saying that.
No, I actually saw that interview, and I would be happy to actually donate the 2 books because I feel like you guys you have this platform. You've allowed me to come and play with you guys. It's the least I can do is to offer up, and I don't mind even offering up both 2 copies of Lessons and 2 copies of The Promise.
Oh wow!
That's so awesome! Thank you, Darlene. That's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, so amazing. And you didn't have to do that, but yeah, that's awesome. Because I've learned over the last couple of years to become a better receiver. So I'll say thank you, and we'll accept it. Awesome stuff. So continuing down this path in terms of, and I want to switch gears a little bit in a second, but continuing down this path with the book, and you mentioned the title and what came into the title and all that kind of stuff. And then how important the subtitle was when because you tested it, which again, another thing I don't want to gloss over. You tested this. You actually did what do they call it? A focus group.
Focus group. Yeah.
And so my question on that too is, how did it test after you added the subtitle? Because I'm sure you tested it both times, like to see if the subtitle worked as well.
Yeah, so I tested the title first, and 1 out of the 10 people mentioned depression as in mental illness. So then I was like, okay. And I knew I was going to have a tagline. I just hadn't figured it out yet because you only have so much room. And trying to come up with the exact words that I needed to in 4 or 5 words was more difficult than you can imagine for me. I don't know why it was so difficult. But so then I tested it with another 10 people to see whether that came up or not. And it didn't. But that 1 out of 20, it stuck in my head. So I thought it really has to talk about debt or money in the subtitle so that they would understand the connection. And then I just worked at it till I found one that I went, okay, that sounds good. Okay, I'm good.
So Corey, Darlene, one of the things that I do when I coach people is I did a 4-day challenge to get people to get their book started. And so on the final day, what we do is we do hot or not titles. And so the whole group gets to say, okay, here's my title idea. Is it hot or not? And if they don't like it, then they offer suggestions. And the people just love it because they love getting that instant feedback on whether people like their titles or not. And it's funny because the group still does it. Like we encourage them, okay, put your titles in the group, right? Because we want to be able to help you and support you. So
I think that's amazing for you to give them that forum to be able to do that.
Absolutely. And I think what happens is a lot of times people get so attached to their title and they forget that they're not the book buyer.
Yes.
You need to go ask your community, right? Because they're the ones who are going to buy your books. And if they don't like your title, if they don't think it hits the nail on the head, then they're not going to buy your books. So you need to get that feedback from your book buyers, not from the author. And the author has to learn to not be so attached to their words.
I agree with that. I think also too, it's not just the title. Your book cover is really, really important. And I've told lots of my clients, go into chapter. I know we can't do that right now, but hopefully we'll be out of lockdown soon. If you go into chapters, you can see there's certain books that just jump out at you. Why? Why are you looking at that book versus another book? And also that there can't be a disconnect between your title and what your book cover is. And I know that, we're all in the industry and we're helping people. We've all seen those books where the title and the picture, you're like, what? And I would say to people, if there's a disconnect, it's an automatic no, because no one has the time anymore to be able to decide, is it right or wrong? It's just like, it's a no. So make sure that it's all connected. I mean, this in The Promise, and I'll just show you this. So this here is, it is actually a scene in the book. And it's actually my niece. I had a really talented young photographer who ended up being able to produce this picture for me. But I've had so many people say to me, the promise didn't pull me in, the picture did. And I wanted to know what was going on with that little girl. And so for me, I'm very methodical about what the title is and also what the cover is, because I want to make sure it draws people in and makes them want to pick up the book. It's as simple as that.
So, I want to tag onto that since we're down that path, Darlene, because to your point about it being intentional, I mentioned that the Book of Why, the premise was I wanted it to be a book that felt timeless. Like you could have picked it up 50 years ago or now, and the cover feels like it fits whichever way timeline. Probably because I'm such a big fan of old books. Like first book I ever read was How to Win Friends from 1937. Second book I ever read was Think and Grow Rich. I mean, so immediately that's the style of writing I like. It's old school. And so to your point, this was all intentional. Like, for example, so I'm just showing people to kind of back up what you said as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But the forewords by James Redfield. Well, and James wrote the Celestine Prophecy. That's intentional. So I mean, I'd be foolish not to have James write the foreword if he's willing to, but it's intentional. I'm trying to use an example, but I'll just use a random example because it doesn't fit here. It would have on another book of mine, but I didn't use Gary V or Tim Ferriss because that wouldn't fit.
Yeah.
It wouldn't fit. My book is about these timeless principles, which the Celestine Prophecy was about, and a manuscript and all that feel. And then the contemplative guy, the Book of Why, it's about thoughtful thoughts and insight, and then the timeless secrets, again, that timeless feel, right? And so that, like to your point, this was all intentional. The graininess that you talked about, all intentional. But also the one thing I've shared in the past, which people maybe will glean something from, is when I wrote this book, what I did every day, and Kelly, I think you've heard me say this before, but what I did every day is I sat down and read pieces from the old timeless books. So, for example, I would sit down and read a chapter or a section from Think and Grow Rich to get myself in that writing style before I wrote every day. So the book's meant to be written in that style. The cover's meant to be in that style. And so when you say that, I just want to back that up, that I believe it's truly important, because otherwise when somebody picks it up, they're going to say, this doesn't fit. And I will say, I know I was on the right track because I don't know if it's on. It's on the back here. Onlinebookclub.org did a review of it, and they said, I'm sure many of us have read The Secret. For lots of people, that was a major turning point in their lives. For others, that moment occurred when they read the Celestine Prophecy. For some, that turning point will be this very book. That tells me that it was in alignment.
Right.
Because they're comparing it to the right books. And obviously it makes sense if it says it's like the Celestine and then James on the front wrote the foreword. But it's interesting how you say how important that is, because it's also amazing how many people will write a book and put all that heart and soul into it and not consider, is it all congruent? So I'm just glad you brought that up, and I just wanted to again validate what you just said.
Yeah, a couple of points on that is that was a great illustration of everything around that cover. I think people forget that your cover is like you walking in a room. So if you're walking in a room of professionals and you have your sweats on and your hair hasn't been washed in days, who's going to want to talk to you? It's a very judgmental thing. So you have to make sure that whatever room you want your book to be in, that it's attractive to those people. And that goes back to what you said, Kelly, where this is about the people who are going to read, not you. So if your favorite color is pink and it's not consistent with what your book is bringing out there, you can't use pink. I don't care if it's your favorite color.
Exactly.
Because it's not about you. It's about the reader. So I'm glad you brought that up too, because I think sometimes authors really get caught up in, well, it's mine and I want it to be like I want it to be and I don't care. Well, then why bother publishing? Just, make up one book. You can do it on Amazon. You can produce one book, put it on your shelf and call yourself an author. But if you really want people to read it, let's take away as many of the boundaries and challenges that you have for people to read your book. And let's start.
Even when we were working on the Blue Talks books, right? Corey, when we were talking about the cover, right, of the first one, and you put it out to everybody and said, okay, what is your favorite cover? Because we had, I think, 3 different samples, wasn't it? Yeah, the first one, we had like 3 different samples. And I was all upset because my favorite was the second cover. So I wanted the second cover, which is...
I agree. I like the second cover better.
I love the second cover.
You're also in the second book, too.
Everybody voted, and they wanted the first cover that we picked. For that one, I was having a little, temper tantrum at home by myself. And I was like, I love this one, but everybody else loved that one. So then I suggested to Corey, well, why don't we take the second cover that everybody loved, like the second place cover,
second most popular
for the second book. And I was so excited because then I got the second cover.
Well, Kelly, you brought up an important point, though. Like, and that there's another great example of a focus group. I tried to put it out to people and say, what do you think? And having said that, here's something that got changed. So a couple of things. One was that somebody at first, and I wasn't planning to leave it like that, but people commented, so I knew, okay, I got to make sure this is huge. But originally we had the male on the front holding the briefcase. And that was what the designer did. Now, I didn't go that far into it yet, but I wanted feedback. And a lot of people immediately said, well, there's a lot of females in this book. Why would be only a male on the cover? And so that feedback turned into two people. And also, we wanted to make sure it wasn't a situation where you're picking, for example, one race on the front cover over another. So that's why it's kind of shadow focused. So then it's not really intended to be, a certain person. You're not seeing their face that well. And so what I'm saying is a lot of details went into those things, but really it came back from feedback from people saying, I like this. And so there is a common theme, right? Like there's the universe type theme. Again, I'll try to show it there. I mean, there's the spiritual type theme almost. And then again, the sort of the tree of life, mixing the moon, which is a mixer of the two. And so there is a definite vibe and feel, I think, to each of the books. And of course, you notice they're all blue.
Yes, and the vibe is congruent across all three, which is not easy to do. When you have a completely different picture, it's not easy to do. So you guys did a really great job of having that congruent and that it's recognizable as your book. Like Chicken Soup for the Soul did a really good job of having that template. So regardless of what color or what the picture is on the front, that is a Chicken Soup for the Soul book. So you guys did a really good job of having that congruent and having that feeling being across all of the books.
Well, it was interesting, Corey, when you showed me the samples, because you had, I think, 5 samples for book 3. And so 2 or 3 of them, I said, no, Corey, that doesn't even fit in with book 1 and 2. It just doesn't even look anything like it. So it was like, yeah, no, like they're completely out. So it's interesting comes up for book 4 and 5.
Yeah, and the tree of life was in my head. That was one thing I wanted to run with, because I just felt it's a universal thing, but it has a great energy around it. By the way, I'm sure the chakras will work their way into one of them in the future. And so I know I can work with something like that. So, I mean, the great thing is Kelly introduced me to a great designer. And so, I mean, I'm sending it and saying, here's what I want, but she's putting it together. And so, the next one, if I want to work with chakras, I have to send her samples of what I want. But because if I keep working with her only, it'll stay within that theme, I think. That's the plan. Well, and if it doesn't, I'll just get her back to that theme. But we did have one that was like made no sense at all. If you remember, Kelly, there's one that looked like it looked like the old comic books from the 50s, like the science fiction type comic books. And that one got voted against like really bad. But it's nobody's fault, right? You put a 5 and hope for the best, and there were 2 that just weren't popular at all. But that one, I think it was like a guy looking inside of a cave.
Yeah,
it had the vibe, but even the words were like the old science fiction words. They were done different and everything. And
was the one you used before this one. That was the other designer that you used before we used.
That's correct. Yes, 100%. That's what it was. Yes.
This is just weird. Like, this doesn't fit. Yeah.
So that's another takeaway for people is if you're going to work with a designer, if you're doing a series especially, you might want to work with the same designer. Having said that, Darlene, as we start to wind down here, we talked a lot about books, but I think it really still relates to the work you're doing because you keep bringing it back to how important the messaging is, how important clarity is around your message. Can you talk a little bit before we let you run about the work that you do with people, a little more like how you help people and what that looks like?
Sure. So I started the Clarity Project almost by accident because I was at a conference, and as one of the last people to leave, I actually had a conversation with somebody I didn't know waiting in the lobby for our mutual friends that were having a conversation. And this was a guy who I asked, what do you do? And then he rambled for 5 minutes, started sweating and turning red. And it was just one of those epiphanies for me. Like, this happens too often where an entrepreneur or a small business owner can't even talk about clearly and concisely what they do. And so I decided that I was going to go on a mission and help every entrepreneur be able to articulate who they are, what they do, whom they serve, and how they're different in 1 or 2 sentences, not paragraphs, sentences. And so that is the work that I do with my clients. So there's 2 parts. There's the coaching around the messaging, really getting them to that point where they have that foundational messaging that they can say very clearly and concisely. And then the second part is using that messaging. I'm a copywriter for websites, emails, social media. But I have to say that the messaging portion of it, the coaching I do around that, is really not about the words. It's about the confidence you get when you can stand up and say, this is who I am. And that to me is really my divine purpose, is allowing people to be able to stand up and say, this is who I am, clearly and concisely, confidently, and with this calm, confident presence that they value themselves. They understand their brilliance. And that's what I want for everyone, is just to be in that place where they can stand up and say, hey, this is me, and I do this, and I'm awesome. And if you're this person, you should be talking to me. And I'm not in a pushy, salesy way, but just in that confidence, you know? And we've seen it in so many people who have that calm confidence, and you gravitate towards them because you want to know them, you want them to be your friend, and you want to work with them, whether it is as a client or as a collaboration. So really, that's the main part of my work. The writing is, I mean, I've been writing all my life. It's great. It's fun, but it's really getting people to that point where they're just confident about who they are.
You know what I love so much about that, Darlene, is that there's a clarity around what you do for people. You know, I love that you have that clarity that it's not, like you say, just about getting your message right. It's about the person being able to stand up and say, this is what I do. And just like Seth Godin had this thing one time where I forget what it was called, the Icarus Project or whatever. And the whole tagline was, you could hold it in your hand and say, look, I made this. You know, and to me, it's like that, the clarity of, look, I made this. You know, he was helping people be able to say proudly, this is mine.
And I think, and I tell a lot of people this, is I can write you great messaging, like bang on the perfect messaging. But if you don't believe it, it will never translate. So it's not just the words you say, it's the belief behind it. And that's where people need to get with their messaging. It's better to have shitty messaging, sorry for my language, and believe it than to have the best messaging in the world and not. You'll actually get better traction the other way.
So true. And I wanted to, just because there were a couple of comments, Brenda Juby said, love your story, great advice. And there was a question here I want to make sure I tackle before I forget to tackle it, which is Lynn Philgate, who said, awesome, how can I enter? So of course, I think she means with the books. And Lynn, you just did. So how you enter is just comment. It's the easiest way for us to keep track. And so, Darlene, as we bring things to a close, I know you shared a little bit about contacting you and stuff like that. But where is kind of the hub that you would send people? You mentioned the blog being on your website. Is that where you would send people? But if people want to learn more, they want to connect with you further, where would you direct them?
So you can go to my website, darlenebutts.com. And in there at the bottom of the homepage is a place where if you want to connect with me and have a conversation, you can go right in my calendar and book some time with me. I'm also on social media, Darlene G. Butts, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. I love having conversations. I love being able to help people wherever they're at to get to that next step or next level. So if you just want to have a conversation and figure that out, I love to talk, if you can't tell.
Never apologize for that. You're in the world about clarity, so it's good that you can communicate. I love it.
Yes.
So Darlene, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for being such a great Blue Talks community member. Thank you for sharing so much about your path down the author and writing world, because I didn't know all the way down that path myself. So I've learned some new things about your background today. And I think we're really, which is part of this as well, is opening people's eyes about the book world, the speaking world, the podcasting world, so they go into it in the right way. I mean, still want everybody to enter it. I don't want to scare them out of it, but I think it's important they know that you don't just write the book. In most cases, there may be exceptions in the world, but there's very rare you write the book and somebody grabs it for you and says, I'll go out and tell the world, and you don't have to do anything.
That would be a dream unit.
Yeah, and if you are, you probably have enough money to throw at a publicist to do that every day. So that rarely happens. So I think it's important for us to tell people the ways to get around that, what you can do to shortcut the process, but also going into it knowing what it really is like. So thank you for being so truthful and open and honest about the business. And then at the same time, sharing the importance of us having clarity around what we do.
Well, I want to thank you both. I know how much work this is for you guys to put this together and for you guys to be here and be present for each of the speakers. I really appreciate it. I think this is day 3 and you guys are still have lots of energy, and I've watched the previous interviews and really enjoyed them. So thanks for all you do to make the world a better place.
Thank you so much. That's so kind. And just on that note, as a segue, I'm going to be showing a test, talking about focus groups, premiere of the Blue Talks trailer that I'm getting ready for the C-Suite Network. I'm going to run it here in a few minutes or what have you for people to check it out. I know it needs a bit of work still, but I want to get some feedback on it before I get it ready for them. But so we're going to be doing that. But then we do have one more guest today. And so I'll recommend to people, Darlene said, learning a lot from these guests. I will say the next guest is going to be no different. It's Tasia Valenza. She's an Emmy Award winner. One of my students through our TEDx. She has a TEDx talk that she did in LA. She's a Blue Talk speaker, but she's a communications coach, and she helps people give great voice. That's her brand. And so we're going to be talking about communication next. So yeah, it's been a great day, but thank you so much, Darlene. But I want to add, it's going to keep on going. I think Tasia's going to she's going to bring her A game, and she's going to crush it. And it's really cool too that we focus talking to you around the author side. We had Rob talking about the media, and now we're talking to Tasia about the speaking. So it's a great variety day.
Yes, I can't wait to hear. It's been awesome. All good so far.
Oh, thank you so much, Darlene. We so appreciate it and you. So thank you so much. We'll call it a to be continued. We'll send you off on your day. Brenda did say another comment. Thanks, Darlene, for sharing your wealth and knowledge. Your work is so needed. I love your authenticity. So just to give you a little feedback. Awesome. So thanks so much, Darlene. We'll let you run, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Darlene. Awesome. I'll add too, Kelly, I wanted to add that another comment that I saw in passing was from, where's it at here? Lori A. McNeil. And this was from a while back, but she said, what's in it for them? And I think that was a reference to when we were talking about the media and making sure you make it about what's in it for the listener or the reader. So I just want to acknowledge her comment as well. And
yeah. And Kelly, I think that's a big thing, because I know one of my clients, she's really struggling trying to sell books. And so she showed me what she's telling people. And it's basically, it's all about numbers and stuff like that. And I just said to her, I said, well, that's really good what you're doing. You've hit the numbers market, like the people who are all about numbers, but you've missed 75% of the heart people, right? So it's what's in it for the heart people to buy your book, right? Absolutely. A lot of times we get so stuck on saying, hey, you need to buy my book because it's going to increase your business by 75%. Well, that will hit a certain market of people. But what about those people who want to hear the story about how a single mom, increased her business and, by 75%, or how a single mom who was struggling and now can feed her children.
Yeah.
Right?
And so the idea of what does increasing your business 75% do for your personal life, for instance, is another aspect of that.
Right.
So, Kelly, I was going to ask too, I was going to try to queue up the trailer I mentioned. Did you mind, sharing with the audience for a few minutes just while I set that up? Are you cool with that?
Yeah, we can do that. Sure.
I can throw something out if you want to talk about, or you can just wing it.
Or what it can talk about is about that comment was what's in it for them.
Okay, I'll let you talk about that. I'm going to get this queued up and I'll be right back.
Okay, cool. So again, a lot of times what happens is we get so stuck in our stories and we think that we should just tell people why they should buy our book or why they should put us on their podcast, or, we have a great story and you need to have us on there. The thing is, that's not what people want. They want to know what's in it for them. So you want to tell them what result or what outcome will they achieve by buying your book or having you on their podcast or having you on their stage, whatever it is, or hiring you as a coach. For example, it's easy for me to go and say to you, you need to hire me as your coach to become a best-selling author. And you're going to say, well, why? What's in it for me? Right? But if I'm able to tell you, look, with the Blue Talks book. You'll see the 3 Blue Talks books. We took that book and made it a international best-selling book in probably 20 categories or so. And because of that, you're going to be able to have the credibility of being a contributor to a best-selling book. Then you might say, oh, okay, I can see what's in it for me to be in the Blue Talks book, right? Because there's going to be some sort of result for it. It's not for me to just say, it's not good enough for me to just say, you need to hire me as a coach. It's better for me to say, what kind of result or what kind of outcome are you going to get? Right? So that's what I always say, even as when people approach me and they say, you know what, I have a great story. I should write a book. Okay, great. Why? Right? Like, why? What makes you think your story is so great? Like, tell me about your story. Right? Why is it so great? What's in your story that's going to make people interested in buying your book or hiring you to speak? So a lot of people just think, well, I just have a great story. That's why. But no, people want to know what it is. And yesterday, like at the New Media Summit, you know, some of the girls were telling us the reason my story is so passionate or is so impactful is that I was, you know, or for example, with my story, you know, I got burned as a little 2-year-old. For most of my body, I spent every 2 days in the hospital, or no, in the operating room for 4 months when I was 2 years old. And then every 2 years until I was like 20 years old, I would have to go back to the hospital for more surgeries because they needed me to grow. And as I grew, then I'd have more skin, and then they could do more skin grafts, right? So it's all about tying in that story. And the story is what makes people interested. Oh, okay, good. You got it up there?
Yes. The worst part about this is I have to maximize one and then minimize me. So I'm going to try this. I'm going to put it on the full screen and then play it.
Okay.
Hopefully it plays. I think I can still hear you, Kelly. So if it's not playing, let me know. But I'm going to put it on and like right now, can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. So, and you can see it on the screen there now?
Yep, I can see you on the screen.
Okay, I'm going to play it. Like I said, there's a couple of choppy parts I got to fix. But it's just, I just wanted to show people and get your thoughts as well, Kelly. It's basically, well, I'll talk to you about it after I play it. And
okay, great.
3 minutes and a bit. So.
Excellent.
To Blue Talks. In the 70s and 80s, we talked customer service. And I'm using the term right now freely, but I'm going to deliver great customer service. And then I think we went to customer satisfaction. You know, we're going to deliver amazing customer satisfaction. And then Apple comes along, and I'm not just saying it was them, but Apple comes along with this technology that a lot of people would say delivered what we weren't expecting. And there were a lot of other companies, like there were a lot of online.com companies doing this as well. Even if you think of Amazon, the stuff they were able to do online that people before had to be in person to deliver at that level. What happened is I think we moved into customer innovation. So now we're innovating for our customers. So the question becomes, where are we now? And when I say we're there, this is where I think we are in terms of what people are trying to achieve and what optimally we should be doing. Not necessarily what we're always doing, but the last one, the one where we are today, in my belief, is customer personalization. So customer personalization to me means we should be personalizing the experience to the customer.
And don't internalize the opinions of others. I used to take things so personally, and it wasn't until I read the 4 agreements that it suddenly clicked and realized that whatever people say, whatever they do toward me, is all about them. What's going on here, these 6 inches here, is how they're reflecting back to me. So as long as I'm feeling true to myself, that not taking things personally, it is freedom.
Here with all of you today at Harvard. Quick question. Who here in the room has kids? Hands up. Keep your hand up if you like them. Okay. Most people's hands remain up. You know, one time I asked this question to a room full of people, a lady in the front row. She had 2 kids, 2 hands up. Okay, then I asked, keep your hand up if you like them. And she did this.
Like one kid. The reason I share this with you is that the topic of today's presentation actually started when I was researching how to become a good father. In 2012, I was about to become a father for the first time, and I started to think about what I would like for this little new human being to be. And I listed off all of my checklists, what traits and attributes and characteristics I wanted this child to have. And then I quickly realized that's a exercise in insanity, because the child that you get is the child that you get. Right? But what I started to do then is look at the people in my world who I admired. And I decided if there were some things that I could find amongst these people that could potentially be taught or harnessed into a new little human being, that was something that I would like to spend a little bit of time with.
And on the outside, my life looked just as perfect. I had just become a new psychologist in private practice. I was happily married, I still am, to my husband of 3 years. And I was a role model as a second-degree black belt to kids, teens, and adults. And I was really confident in everything I did, meaning I believed in my abilities to do things really well. But behind closed doors was another story.
Okay, let's get rid of that. And I don't know how to, where it stops share screen on this thing. Oh, there you go. Stop sharing. Awesome. Okay. Yeah. So that's the, basically the video that I'm working on to, just so that when you come to our C-Suite network page, it starts playing. It's kind of like the introduction to Blue Talks. And, and there's a couple of, well, anyway, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I would like the ending part that they had. What about like having the books come up?
Yeah, I mean, that can be done quite easily.
Right? Because I think that would be kind of cool to be able to like flash each one of the books. Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I think it's great. I just thought that would be kind of cool to have the books in there too, right? So
yeah, that's really easy. Well, I shouldn't say it's super. It's fairly straightforward to do that. I might get double check with Shelly if she can do that part for me while I'm doing some other stuff and get that part done. Basically, and it's, to me, it's like it'll go up and it could change over time. Like it's a placeholder almost to get something up so we can start getting that show rolling. But once the page is up now, so officially now, technically, once we start getting episodes added, which I'm going through that process of doing that by Monday. That means that, and this is kind of an announcement for people as well, this is the kind of the start of the show and Blue Talks now being aired on platforms like Roku and Amazon and Apple and stuff like that.
Right.
Because C-Suite pushes it out to those networks for us.
Yeah.
And so it's a matter of getting the page set up so that they can do that. But yeah, they asked me for a trailer. So as a placeholder so that I could get it up so they could finish the page and send me the link, I sent them an older one, which was basically one that I least did. And I did for the very first launch of the virtual events. It was like a trailer or whatever you want to call it, a teaser we did for that. And then so now I got to get one done. And the one thing that's interesting is it wasn't intentional, but the 3 videos we picked were all from Harvard.
Right.
And it wasn't intentional. It was just because we want to have the balance, 2 males, 2 females, and all that kind of stuff. But one thing that's really cool for people that watching on the outside in is the evolution of this. Like we started at in St. Albert, and you were at that event. You helped MC the event. You were helping volunteer and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And then full circle to when you were at the U of A. And I can't wait for your video to be out as well. But it's amazing the difference in filming now because we're using different filmmakers. That's not a knock to the previous one, but we had different venue. Like the U of A venue was all black background, so you can do more with it. But it's amazing the difference in the look right now. When I look back at the older ones versus now, it's amazing watching the evolution already.
Right. Yeah, no, that's awesome. And me being half deaf, that was the only other thing that I would do is probably amp up the audio so people could hear it better. But that's just because of me, right? So, yeah.
Yeah.
But
and
no,
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think it would be cool to have the books in there. And I wasn't really totally in love with the stuff at the very end, where she just flashing back all that stuff that she also put at the beginning.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Like I just felt that would be a cool spot to put the books, right? With just the book flashing in and out.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I'll have to see how it looks once it's in there, but we could put the books, and then what that is that's the intro and outro music. So it's more the music, and then it just happens that it's like a full, almost like bookends. But
Right.
we could have the books in. Speaking of bookends, we could have the books in, and then close it out with that, or just have the music with the books. I mean, I'll figure it out, but
Yeah.
So we'll definitely get that done as well. And those of you watching here or watching the replay, any feedback on it, let me know as well. Again, it's literally, I mean, it's meant to be kind of like the thing you first see when you go in. So it is very important, but it's more because C-Suite has that, they have that basic template that they want it to be a trailer when you first go in. But
Right.
the benefit of me getting this done is I can have it as the main trailer that plays if you discover the Blue Talks YouTube channel without me sending you the link. Because on my welcome to Corey Poirier, whatever, my Corey Poirier YouTube channel, that video that I have is the welcome. It's the thing that plays for every new person to the page. And it has like 1,000 views. And I haven't sent one person to that video ever. So,
Awesome.
So what I'm saying is it could be good to have that as the first thing that people see when they go to the page. So if I get the trailer done right for the C-Suite thing, I can use it for there as well. And then we're also going on Connect TV, as you know, and I'm waiting for Kent to send me over the details to finalize that. And then, so I'll use the trailer probably on his page too. So it'll be multi-purpose. Brenda said, yeah, I agree with you, Kelly, to have the books in there as well.
Yeah.
So awesome. I might, excuse me, I might even put in if I'm going to do that, I might even put in the podcast logo, like the logo for the podcast, so it talks about the fact that it's also, that's one of the other platforms as well.
Yeah, and the reason I like the book covers is because it feels more spiritual, whereas it feels like the ending part, like those things that flashed in and out, it made it feel more corporate-like instead of more spiritual.
That makes sense, totally.
Yeah.
No, I will absolutely get that done. And and so I'm super stoked because each one of these little moments is good for all of us. When everybody involved in Blue Talks and everybody that's been following this journey as well, each one of these developments means we're reaching more people with Blue Talks. So I'm super stoked that we're finally there. And we're with C-Suite for the
reason I like the book covers is because
my page started opening. The other thing too is what's also happened is not only did where we bring in the show over there, TV show, but and it's going to be, we're going to have interviews on there, even clips from here and stuff like that too. But we're bringing that over there. But the podcast is already over there, and I've already seen a really nice bump in podcast listens. The podcast since we launched has done really well anyway, but I've seen a really nice bump over at C-Suite as well because they do a lot of separate marketing for that. So yeah, lots of cool things happening with Blue Talks. That's the takeaway from that.
That's excellent. It's nice to see the brand build. It's awesome.
Absolutely. And you were talking about, just to circle back what you were talking about before we started playing that, you were talking about kind of what's in it for that person. And, if you're talking to a person about book sales, you have to explain to them what's in it for them to become an Amazon bestselling author. It's not just, it could be about the status. We said it earlier. Some people, the goal is to become a bestselling author so they can add that to their bio and have that as expert credibility. If you're a doctor, most people will always put more credibility in the doctor that wrote the book on it. So for some, it might be just, if I have the book out, it's credibility. For some, it might be, I want to impact a lot of lives. For others, it might be driving people to my back end business. And we talk about that loosely often, but that's a really big thing for a lot of people, is to actually write the book so that you can introduce people to the business that you run. I mentioned John Lee Dumas has a book on podcasting. Well, that was part of the reason for that book, is it lets people know he's the guy to go to for podcasts. And then we talked about, I have them over here somewhere, but Russell Brunson with the ClickFunnels books. I mean, I don't even know the number, but I'm going to speculate it's probably upwards, and people are going to think I'm out of mind. But based on some of the things I've seen, I believe this to be true. It's upwards of $100 million that he's earned on the back end of those books through ClickFunnels.
Oh my God, that's incredible.
I think ClickFunnels is like a $200 million a year business. And one of his biggest funnels is the books. So he's done okay on the back end. And my point is, he needs to know that that's the goal of the book. By the way, knowing that's the goal of the book would probably keep him from going with a traditional publisher, even though he has a big enough network to do it. So he went with Morgan James like me. That's a traditional publisher to some degree, but you get a lot more flexibility with Morgan James, and they're more of an entrepreneurial author. And so I really believe he decided this is the type of publisher I have to go with for a book like this.
Right.
He also wanted people to be able to pick up his book in stores at Barnes and Nobles and what have you, and he wouldn't have been able to do that to the same degree with a self-published book. So, from that end, like I said, I think it's important we always go back to what is your goal with the book. And then from the other side, like you said, when you're working with somebody, you need to be able to tell the person, this is what you get from working with me.
Right. And people, I think that's the biggest mistake that a lot of people make when they're marketing their books is that they just say, go buy my book. Today we're doing our best-selling launch. And, when people do that, I always say to them, okay, but what's in it for them to buy the book? Mm-hmm. The reason you're not getting a lot of sales is because people are like, well, why should I help you? And they're not trying to be rude. They're like, what's in it for me to spend that $20 on you?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I always tell people, tell the story, because the story is what's going to make people buy the book. It's not that because you've got a great book with a great message and everybody should have it. It's what is that story that people are going to be drawn to?
Absolutely. And, with the Book of Why, one of the stories for me was that I found my purpose and my why in my mid-20s. And it changed everything. I went from this guy who was a pessimist, a hypochondriac, to all of a sudden a person that was on top of the world, wakes up every day with a fire in his belly. And I wanted this book to teach people how that happened for me. Like I wanted to give that to other people. And so to me, that's the real story of this book, I went through this and I want you to have it too. And this book is hopefully the gateway for you to get there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I still remember too, this was a couple Christmases ago, but I got 2 letters. So one of the letters was from some sort of charity and they said, here's our financial report and we hope that you donate to us. Okay, so that was the one letter. And I was like, oh, why? Why should I donate to you? Then the second letter came from a whole different charity. And they said, we would really like your donation, but here's a story about what we do. And they talked about this little boy that was really, really sick and had nowhere else to go. And so they took him into their place. And as a result of this young boy is now, finally on his feet and he's able to get a job and he can live on his own. And it was like, awesome. That's who I want to donate to. Right. And so that's why I say the power of the story is what's going to make people buy from you, get coaching from you, or everything. It's what it is. That's what's going to make people want to, be involved with you.
Yeah, it's so true. And that's why I think it's important to understand how to get your story out. And so in some cases, that could be on your own. You might know how to do that, or you might tell a story so greatly that everybody just swarms around it. But I'm going back for a second to say somebody like Darlene, when she helps you with clarity, that's why it's important to get somebody to help you with clarity around your story. If you don't know it, is because everything comes back to the story.
Absolutely. Another example of this, and this might fit with you with your customer service, but when you go to Starbucks and then the people just have the tip jar. And it's like, why should I give them a tip? All they did is go back there, make my thing and, make my coffee or my tea and bring it back to me. Why should I give them a tip? But if you go to Tim Hortons and they have their little tip jar, but it's to donate the money to the children's camp. And it's like, okay, I'll give you money because that money is going to go to the children's camp. I want to help those children be able to go to camp. Right? So it was like, even again, it's all about the story. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like I said, I think it's people sometimes overlook that power. And there's a reason why if I were to list to you my top 10 favorite speakers, and at least 3 of the people out of the 10 are in, most people's top 10 lists, it's because they're masterful storytellers.
Oh, totally. Completely.
People ask me, the first book I ever read, as I've mentioned over and over, is How to Win Friends and Influence People. And when people ask me, what did he do differently? Why did that book bring you in at age 27 and all the other books failed? It's because Dale Carnegie was a masterful storyteller. I can still tell you to this day, And of course, I've read the book multiple times, but I could tell you at any point since I read that book, first book I ever read, I can tell you who the first story is about in the book. I can tell you the first page what it's about. Yeah. And that's why I got pulled in, is the story pulled me in from the first page. It was a story about a guy named Two Gun Crowley, who was like an outlaw back in the day. And the story was about how he did all these, what we might consider hateful things. But whenever the cops showed up and there was a shootout and they read this letter he left, basically the letter was like, why would everybody always pick on me? Why did everybody hate me? And the premise of his story in the book was, from his perspective, he wasn't evil at all. And the idea was, you need to see things from other people's perspective. So from his perspective, he was like this great guy, and he was just always having bad luck, and the cops were out to get him and all this other stuff. But that was the premise of the story. But that story pulled me in, and the book never let me go. And it's because the guy knew how to tell stories like nobody's business. There's a reason why he had the Dale Carnegie public speaking courses in the 40s had 1 million people signed up.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
And there's still people signing up to this day. The book is sold, I don't know what it is now, probably 50 or 60 million copies. And all of that's on the back of story. So, you know, this is a big area, but I hope people take, we're hitting this area hard because it is so important, the story. And, with the Blue Talks books, every chapter in there is a story. The whole book is built of stories. And yeah, I think storytelling is a lost art in some cases. And I think it's an art that it's worth investing your time in, because it'll, as you just said, it'll help you impact more lives. It'll help you make a difference in lives, even if you're not trying to make money from something. It'll help your business. It'll help, or if you're trying to sell books, if you're trying to speak on stages, it all comes back to story. So if you know how to tell a great story, you've got it made in the shade.
Totally. I feel that there's a lot of speakers out there. I call them preachers, because they just tell you what to do. They just say, well, do this, do this, do this, do this. And if you do all that, then you will overcome your fear, or you'll overcome whatever, or you'll become a millionaire, or you'll be, whatever that may be. But if you tell the story that goes with it, that engages people and they remember it better. Right?
Absolutely.
And it totally goes back to my whole skydiving story. Like, I don't know if you saw my picture on my wall. It's a picture of me and my kids. We're walking on the tarmac in our skydiving outfit because we got to skydive. And my son, he was scared of heights, right? And have I told you this story before?
I don't think so.
Do we have time to tell the story?
Yeah, for sure. Actually, do you mind if I'm going to run and take a quick break then? And can you tell the story to everybody, and then I'll listen in and I'll circle right back? Is that cool?
Okay, sure. Okay. You bet. Okay. So a lot of times people talk about fear and overcoming fear. And a lot of people have a fear of heights, right? Or they have a fear of moving forward, or a fear of success, a fear of failure. They have this fear about something. And so when we were filming for my documentary, Still Beautiful. And one of the things that we were doing was this skydiving event. So what we were doing is that if you raised $1,000, you could skydive for free. And then that $1,000 went to my charity, the Blankets for Burn Kids. And then what we did is we bought the blankets and gave them to the kids at summer camp. So my one son, Parker, is scared of heights. And so I told him, well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do the skydiving event. And wouldn't it be really cool if we all did it as a family? So me and my 3 kids, and my cousin Cam wanted to do it too. And why don't we have like a family plane so that we all skydive together? And we were doing tandem. And so, of course, my daughter and my one son said, yeah, we're in, no problem. We'll do it. But my one son said, Mom, I don't see any reason why to jump out of a perfectly good airplane. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. And no, I'm not doing it. And I said, okay, no problem, whatever. But, can you please consider it? Because it would be so much fun. We all do it together. It'll be, a great memory. So he said, still, no, sorry, Mom, I don't see any reason to do it. But then what happened was my cousin, he had skydived at this one place before, the one we were going to. So he sat us all down and he talked to us about what was going to happen and what it was going to feel like. And he said, I'll admit the truth. I was scared, but the only point I was scared was, when the door opens and here you are, you've got to like jump out. And he said, that's the part that I was scared. He said, but then when you're out, when you're going on a roller coaster and you feel that drop and it hurts your stomach, he said, you don't feel that way. You just like fly out and you just glide. You don't have that painful feeling in your stomach. And so he told Parker and us all what was going to happen. And so the day came. And my director says to Parker, are you going to jump? And Parker said, I don't know. And my director said, come on, you're going to do it. Just do it. So Parker said, okay, fine, I'll do it. So we go up into the plane, and again, they're filming this all for my documentary. And so all of us are in it, like, all three of my kids and my cousin Cam, and we're in our plane with our tandem masters, and we go up, and my cousin jumps first, and then my Parker, the one who's scared of heights, he jumped, and then Cody jumped, and then Alex, my daughter, jumped, and then finally I jumped. And so I land, and all of a sudden Parker comes running up to me and he goes, Mom, that was awesome. When can I do it again? And I was like, oh my gosh, you really love it. And he goes, oh, it was awesome. And I said, did you get the lesson? And he said, lesson? What lesson? I said, if you never would have done it, you never would have known how much you love it. And I said, how often do we let fear hold us back from doing what we want in our life? And when I'm speaking to women, like speaking on, I used to speak a lot at women's conferences, and now I just kind of feel lost that I don't get to do it. But I do speak on virtual events. Anyways, when I speak to women and I share that story, how many of you have let fear stop you from what you want in life? Now, the reason I share this whole story with you is because it would be very easy for me to go and say in a speech, you know what? If you go skydiving and you jump out of a plane, you'll overcome your fear of heights. Trust me. Would that make you do it? Or what if I tell you the story of my son Parker that I just told you? Would you maybe then consider jumping out of a plane and overcoming your fear? Right? So what is better? Just preaching people what to do, or telling them the story of something that happened in your life where he overcame the fear? And so that's why I always share the stories sell. People love listening to stories. So become a great storyteller, because when you do, that's when people will buy anything you got, because they're engaged with you. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I didn't want to come back on and steal your thunder, so that's why I waited till near the end. Kelly, such a powerful story, and so glad you shared that. And I'll add in, just for people that may be going, well, I feel like I'm there. I want to tell stories. I understand the importance. Maybe before we bring our next guest on, and I'm sure she can add some to this as well, but maybe we can even talk a few tips for storytelling. And so I'll offer a couple that have worked really well for me. And so, as you know, I share one of the stories. Example of how powerful I think stories are is I open up my talks with a story about me bombing on a stand-up comedy stage, which that story, Kelly. And But the whole reason I tell that story is to set the tone for why two things. One is for why you should listen to me and turn all the other things off in your head and all that other stuff. So the story is about how I didn't have the mic turned on when I was performing stand-up comedy. And then at the end of the story, I always say that's why it's so important for you to have your mic turned on. And the metaphor there is that so that you'll be listening to me and in tune and in the moment and take off the I already knew this hat. But there's a second reason for it. When I'm at a venue where I'm speaking into a mic, it allows me to test if you can hear me in the back without looking amateurish. So what I can say is at the first I can say, can you guys hear me at the back? And then I tell the story and say, now you know why I asked if you could hear me. I want to make sure I have my mic turned on. And then it becomes like a running sort of joke that I call back. So now if you thought I looked amateurish when I said, can you hear me at the back? You don't anymore. Because you realize it's me saying, I learned my lesson 20 years ago. And so the point is, that's how important a story is to me, is that I'll set the tone with a 5-minute story to just cover those two things off. But it's always been very effective. Plus, as you know, Kelly, the story gets laughs throughout and it pulls the person in, and they get to know me better because I'll ask them if they would ever perform stand-up, and then they get nervous. And there's a whole bunch of elements. But here's why I said that story, and here's what I wanted to say about your story, is one of the biggest things that people make the mistake on, in my opinion, is adding too many details in their story.
Totally.
So in other words, we don't need to know what color your shirt was that day when you're skydiving, because it's not relevant to the story. Now, if it was relevant to the story, you know, you were skydiving and somebody couldn't see you when you're coming. Now, I know you're wearing a thing when you're skydiving because I've gone too, but it might be relevant. The color of even the color of the uniform and the parachute isn't relevant unless there's something in the story that relates to the color.
Right.
So one of the things people do is they add stuff to the story, especially if they're type A or say a high energy personality, a social personality. Like when I had to work on that, because I would tell you every nuance of the story. You know, and I looked at the clock and it was this time. Why does that matter? It didn't matter to the story. And so I call it trimming the word fat. I mean, there's probably a better way to say that, but really what I'm saying is here's how the system I use to figure out what needs to be in a story and what doesn't, and taught myself how important it is to trim stuff out, is I actually would write down my stories or type emails full out, like I would normally type them. So let's say if I typed it, and let's say it turned out to be 700 words to tell this certain story. Then what I did was I went through the whole thing and said, what words can I take out and have the whole story still make sense? And what blew my mind, I did that exercise like 10 times and sunk in quickly, that I could bring it down to like 200 words and it still made sense and still had as much impact, which helps you because a lot of times when you want to submit an article for a magazine, they'll say 500 words or less. And you're like, there's no way I can get this down to 500 words, but you can. And so the first thing I would say is when you're storytelling, make sure you trim out the stuff that people don't need to hear. There's a whole bunch of details some people share that people don't need to hear. The other side is figure out what the high points of the story are. Like the lesson that your son learned was one of the high notes of that story. So you wanted to make sure you paused there and you told that part of the story in a certain way. You know, when I talk about it not having the mic turned on, and Kelly, you've seen it more times than some, but I tell the story and you don't know where it's leading. And then I'll say, I told my first 2 jokes and I got no laughs. And that's when the comic, the guy who started this, called me over to the corner of the stage and hit me in the back of the head and said, you idiot, we don't even have the mic turned on. And all that.
I love that story.
But you've seen how I do it. It's almost always the same. I lean in and I say, you don't have the mic turned on. Like I'm hitting those notes. Like that's the most important point of that story. And I'm trying to tell the audience that. So make sure you cover the most important points of the story as well. And then the other tip I'll give you on storytelling is work with the rule of 3. I'm a big believer in this. I learned it in stand-up comedy, but people learn and listen in 3s.
Right.
And I've shared this with you. I had a guy in an interview one time, and he said, I'll tell you 3 strategies. And he said, you know why I say 3, Corey? And I said, no, why? And he goes, because there's only 4 numbers in the world. 1, 2, 3, and far too many.
Oh, interesting.
And his message was, once you get beyond 3, nobody cares anymore.
Nobody cares, yeah. And they've tuned out.
Yeah, and now the exception to that is if you have a day-long training session, then you can go 5 or 7. But I'm talking like if you're doing a 20-minute TEDx talk or a keynote, people only care about 3. And so that's why, and that's intentional too. My book is broken down in 3 acts. Why are the 3 acts in a play? Why are the 3 acts in a movie? We've been conditioned to learn in 3s. So when you're storytelling, if you're telling a story, a longer story, make sure you only have 3 at the most takeaways. If you're doing a 45-minute talk, make sure you only have 3 things that you want the audience to leave with. And so I would tell you rule of 3s. And then the bonus one is, I've said this often, content is king, but emotional connection is queen. And the queen rules every castle I know about. So the point there is you want to make sure that your story has a way to connect with the audience in addition to being a great story.
Exactly. So here's some tips I want to give for great storytelling.
Absolutely.
And that is have a story journal. Okay. So you'll see in my story journal, there's pictures, there's words. I keep track, like this is the Scarface story. So when I see this picture, I know I'm going to tell the Scarface story, right? Here's another picture that I have. So it's Hay House. right? So there's a story around Hay House, and then these are just some points that I would talk about. So, and then down here it says leadership and intuition. So if I was to do a speech about leadership or intuition, these are the keywords and that this story would fit into. It also says 5 or 20 minutes. Okay, so I can do a 5-minute version of the story. I can do a 20-minute version of the story. And I learned this from Eric Edmeades. He always puts keywords and he also puts time in there, right? Because you may get into a situation where you have to do an hour speech. And this has happened to me. I was supposed to do an hour speech and I got to the event and they cut me down to 10 minutes. 10 minutes from 1 hour.
Yikes.
How do you cut down your speech down, right? So if I was going to, instead of telling the 20-minute version of that story, I would tell the 5-minute version of that story. So then here's the Parker story. So if I draw this picture in one of my speech maps, I know, okay, I want to tell the Parker skydiving story, right? And that's about perseverance, about fear, it's about knowledge. And then I want to show my speech map. So what I do when I'm preparing for a speech is I'll do a map, right? And just like you talk about your spider method, Corey. So, and you'll see that there's pictures in it, and that's like, the beauty queen story, that's a dating story. And where a guy said, you know beauty queen, right? And I talk about that story. But anyways, there's the topic in the middle and then the different points that I want to talk about. So the reason I believe a story journal is so important is because a lot of times we have these little incidences that happen to us. And sometimes when we're planning a speech or planning a book or a podcast or something, we forget those stories. So that's why I have my story journal, is because I keep track of those stories so that when I want to put a speech together, I just go and pull out the stories and say, oh yeah, this story would be good for that speech, this story, this video, whatever. So that's my tip, is to keep a story journal, because then you'll have a whole collection of stories that you can draw from.
I love it. And by the way, maybe that's another reason to write a book, because I just thought of it as you're saying, a story journal. I have journals, but this book is a story journal too, because I share a lot of the stories in here from that point previous. So previous to this point in my life, when I wrote the book, a lot of my comedy stories in here. So literally, if I was a shortage of stories, I could go through and just flip open to a page. So it became a story journal too. I mean, that's more of a jest thing, in jest. But yeah, I believe in story journals. As a comic, of course, we always wrote down, like if you were driving down the road, back then it would be writing it, but you'd write down a story that happened in front of you. You'd make a note in a journal. We used to have the little kind of flip journals. And then I switched over to start using my phone and recording them. The only problem with the phone recording them is, and I try to type, like I pull over to type the name of it, but you got to go back and search through them and remember which one's which and not lose them. And so I kind of like the written. I kind of maybe wish I would get back to the written. I saw Jerry Seinfeld one time on a documentary. His house, he's got journals, like walls of journals. And then he did this thing on comedians getting coffee. What is it? Comedians in cars getting coffee. He laid out all of his bits on this side street, and it covered like the whole, I can't even describe it, but it covered the whole, our next guest is in LA, and she'll be able to remind me the name of the place. It's totally slipped my head, where Barnes and Noble's at, the Grind, the Grove. I see her lips moving. The Grove. It's like he had almost the parking lot of the Grove covered in all these pieces of paper that were all his material. My point is, even Seinfeld, who's worth just short of $1 billion now, I think, is still writing with a pen and a piece of paper when he sees the story. Yeah. So story journal, so powerful. So agree, Kelly. Thank you so much.
They are. Exactly. Because that's a big problem a lot of people have, is remembering their stories. Right? Remembering our stories. And so, little situations that happen to us, put them in your story journal. You never know where you're going to use it, whether it's a speech, a book, or whatever.
Love it. And by the way, this is a great segue for our last but not least final guest of the day today, because, this is, she talks a lot about communication and speaking. And so it's cool that we've circled around to a story journal and storytelling and the importance of storytelling in books and speeches and all this, because it totally relates to communication. I mean, every bit of that relates to communication. And she's a masterful storyteller as well. One of my great friends. She's an Emmy winner and an Emmy nominee, and she's the voice of. I don't want to steal all her thunder, but she's the voice of a Star Wars character, a Batman character. She's done the Super Bowl, I think the intro voice, and on and on. Amazing stuff. She's had such a cool life and career all the way from Hollywood. Tasia Valenza, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yay! I'm so excited to be with you. This is, I've been listening and writing for my storybook journal because I have not done that. I remember a lot of stories, but definitely brilliant and something I'm going to remember doing because, of course, you know, anecdotally, right? We learn with stories, and it just is a great idea. You know, as the brain goes and we don't remember so much, it's really important to write it down. Gosh darn it!
Absolutely. And I want to dive in, Tasia, to get you to tell us a little bit more about your backstory, and then we'll dive into questions. But having said that, I mean, I'm going to dive in first and then go backwards. But I mean, you have some amazing Hollywood stories, like you're in movies with Sean Penn and stuff like that. I mean, you have this experience. I'm sure that when you tell a story about that, I'm sure that always to teach a lesson, let's say, always hits people more than if you just tried to teach a lesson without the story. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think storytelling is something that, I mean, we grow up on, right? Our parents tell us stories to go to bed. And I can remember not only the ones that I told my kids, but like from when I was a kid. So there's something about storytelling that goes in our brains and stays with us, especially if we can relate to the character. And it just, you know, instead of just that direct, like, blah, 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 it's like you tell a story and we're captured. That's why we love movies. That's why we love books. We're geared to that. So yeah, I mean, if I can share that, you know, when you tell a story, it's like you engage the heart and the mind, especially if you tell it well, right? Especially, that's what I talk about, give great voice. When you can take those words off the page and breathe and speak life into them, they go into your head and your heart. That's why, you know, when we're kids and, you know, our parents tell us the stories, the ones that really act out the parts, you know, and the big bad wolf, as well, the big bad wolf, right? You know, it's like that. So when you can really engage, that's like it downloads even more.
Oh, is Corey frozen? There he is.
Yeah, there you are. I was like, he's stunned by the story. He's so like mesmerized. I know. It's like, that was a good moment.
that was intentional. The universe did that. So, you know, Tasia, I kind of told people a little bit about you. Can you tell us just a little bit more about you and maybe even give great voice? And then we'll circle back to the same area that we're at with storytelling, because I have another question for you in this area as well. But
Sure. So, you know, my background, give great voice is my background. I mean, it's my platform and my passion, right? And at its essence, to give great voice means to move, touch, and impact using our voices, which is our most powerful communication tool. Because our ability to connect emotionally with each other is greatly enhanced when we use our voices intentionally. And now, more than ever, we need to have command over our voices to overcome these obstacles of being in our Zoom boxes, right, all the time, and not being able to be in person, which creates even more challenges connecting and communicating in a meaningful way. And so my mission is to enhance people's ability to give great voice, the art of confident, captivating communication, utilizing the skills of a voiceover actor, which is my background for the last 35 years, in your own life so you can play your professional and personal roles more successfully with more impact in all your relationships. So this really comes, again, this is the essence of Give Great Voice, comes from the fact that I've played thousands of roles from on camera, starting with the movie with Sean Penn and All My Children, the soap opera. And then I kind of call myself a recovering actress and a fully functioning voiceover artist because I found my way to voiceover acting. And, you know, with acting, it's so much about what you look like in terms of their idea of the part, right? So you can be talented and you can give great voice, but if you don't come in with the box, then you're not cast. And you know, so when I was acting, so much of my soul was diminished because I knew I had the gifts to give, but so often I wasn't enough. not tall enough, not blonde enough, not thin enough, certainly never thin enough, not pretty enough, whatever the enoughs were. It always was, you know, we loved you, but. And so when I discovered the power and passion of my voice through voice acting, I was liberated from all this stuff that society deems us all the time, that you're not enough. And I was able to give my passion and become the master storyteller. And so I closed the door on the on-camera career. It was like a 6-year overlap, and devoted myself to this passion to give great voice, to become the master storyteller. And then I noticed over the years, you know, I understood the ideal mother, how to play that role, the ideal, the aspirational, the parts of myself, and all these different parts, and thought, you know what? With a lot of emotional intelligence and self-development and this awareness, my life is pretty magnificent. My family, my role as a voiceover artist, my role as a CEO, my role as a daughter, somewhat challenged, I must say. But I realized I could teach these same skills and help people rock their real life roles by utilizing this novel lens. So that's how I approached it. Because of you, Corey, I was able to present that in a 16-minute TED Talk. So thank you again. And that kind of launched that part of the Give Great Voice platform a year ago, actually February 7th. So it's been a tremendous year. Ironically, it was a lot about moving and touching with our voices, you know, make those calls. February 7th, March 13th, we shut down. And I was like,
Yeah.
thanks, kinda, maybe too much, but we definitely, voice is in. I mean, voice is in between what we're doing here and Clubhouse, which again is this new social media app where it's all about the voice. How we move and touch each other is more important than ever. That was a long spiel.
That's perfect. Oh, that was meant to be. Because it actually sets me up for a follow-up question. But one thing I wanted to ask you, which was a side note question completely, and then remind me, I want to come back to the thing about giving great voice today and storytelling today. But the one thing I want to ask you, you mentioned actor. And one of the things I noticed, I don't know why I never paid attention until recently, but it seems like actor is one of those words that's interchangeable with female actors and female actresses and male actors. It's one of those rare words.
One of those rare words where you don't have to change it to the feminine or the masculine. It just is, right?
Is that correct, though? You're in the industry, so I'm just wondering, is that?
Well, female voiceover actor, but I mean, I just call myself I don't call myself a voiceover actress ever. It's just a voiceover actor, an actor. I mean, I could be an actress, yes, but in terms of voiceover, for whatever reason, it's voiceover actor. You know, there's never been the women want to have voiceover actress. And, you know, like one less thing to make a point of. And so don't say anything. Don't give anybody any ideas.
No, and it's just, I never really thought that much. I never thought it through that much until I just when you said it again, and I hear you say it often, but I just thought, wow, that's one of those words. Like actor must be kind of accepted as male or female. And then the actress gives the females maybe their own exclusive little club as well. But
yeah, you know, I never thought about it either, but I mean, it's something that it's the you know, I always think about the voiceover actor. The acting is the part that we have to remember, because a lot of people think, oh, you know, I've got a great voice, I can be a voiceover actor, but they forget that actor and acting is part of it. So that's what you know, to me, it's about that, you know, the general term acting and actor as opposed to the feminine or the masculine. Are you frozen again, Corey? There you are.
That's so weird. I'm on a wired connection, so I don't know what's happening. I'm actually going to unplug and see if that helps us, because that'll go wireless. So
okay,
it's weird.
You keep freezing at a great moment, though. At least.
Yeah, well, and you guys are freezing on mine, but I'm not sure if everybody else is seeing us freeze. Maybe we're lucky, and maybe it's still playing anyway. So no, that was a side note question completely. To circle back, what I wanted to ask you though, Tasia, is about today. I mean, you mentioned it's kind of like voice is making a comeback, but at the same time, I'm wondering with technology today, how everything's so soundbite-ish. So like Twitter started it, I think, with the whole 140 characters. And so now everything seems to be on the focus of making it shorter. My question is, do you think storytelling is just as important? And has it got harder to tell stories when now we have to tell them so much quicker?
That's a good question. Certainly, our attention spans have limited, right? I've become much more limited, right? It's the guppy, like we're like 9 seconds. We have less than goldfish. So yeah, I would say on social media, I do notice that, for instance, on Instagram, I've just been told, Reels is the TikTok version of Instagram, and my, social media specialist, has been saying, got to make more Reels because they're short, right? They're 15 seconds or less, 30 seconds or less, and you just get that quick, snappy, what you're trying to say. So my minute and a half video on, why to smile or something with communication, now it's got to be taken down. So I would have to say, social media wise, yes. Now we have to put words underneath them because a lot of people actually don't even listen to the voice when they're watching. So yes, it seems probably because we're inundated so much. We're inundated with information. And so our attention span and also that scrolling mechanism has just changed our brains, right? Move on, move on, move on. It's like you, the speaker, can you move on? Can we swipe to the right? Can you get to the next? So I think there's a tolerance level. I have to say with Clubhouse, and if anyone's not familiar, it's this app in beta that is a social media app in the way that you're in real-time conversation. It's basically what we're doing now, but you only see a picture. So it's all about the voice. And this has become a huge phenomenon. Elon Musk was in a room the other day. I mean, it's definitely, it's only for iPhones now, but they're bringing it to Samsung. But I've been in a lot of rooms, as you know, hosting panels. And those panels, those rooms can go on for 16 hours, like trading out the moderators, 17 hours, 24 hours. People will have a room on confident communication. And it just keeps going and going and going. So people are hungry to connect. People are hungry to be in communion with each other, but maybe not so much of just being the viewers, but the participants too. So because you can go up to the stage, you can raise your hand and your picture goes up and you can start talking to, Brendan Bouchard is hosting these rooms. And it's like, so you get access to people that you haven't, and people want to engage. And the average person on Clubhouse is 5 hours. That's
5 hours a day.
That's the statistic. That is the statistic. 5 hours, and it's like I've been one of those people. So I have now started to be like really conscientious because it's a vortex. Because it's like, oh my God, I love this conversation. I love what they're saying. Oh, but look at that room, because you have your feed like, oh, I could learn about magic mushrooms. I can learn about confidence. I can make $1 million in 1 year if I am in this room. And so, you end up in these rooms. But my point is, these storytellers, because there's a dual engagement, people seem to really want to connect with it. But back to your other thing, yes, it seems the other storytelling, shorter, more concise. And I should probably take my own note, right? Because my answers are very long.
No, it's there. I mean, this is a coffee conversation, Tasia. So as long as it happens, is as long as it's meant to be. The universe is steering us in the direction it wants us to be in. So
I love that.
Whatever happens is meant to happen. Having said that, this is an off-air comment, but I even reached out to Tasia last night and asked her if she could teach me a little bit about Clubhouse, because I'm wanting to dip my toes, but I'm also scared because of the commitment I'm seeing people jump into it with. So, but I want to know it. I want to understand it and see where I may be able to fit in. And I also don't want to, I should say, add too, I also don't want to jump in too late. Like if it is going to stick around, and there's never any way to know 100% for sure, but you got to take a risk somewhere. If it is going to stick around, I don't want to be the one last guy who didn't understand how it worked. So I was like early on.
That's the FOMO thing, right?
Yeah.
So Corey, if you want to know what Steve Olson is doing because of, podcasting, what he's doing is every Thursday at 2:00, he goes on and people who are podcast hosts, have their own podcast, can be on it. And then people who are podcast guests can go be on it, and they can pitch in real time to the podcast host and get, picked for being on podcast.
Is that on Clubhouse? Is it doing that kind of a room?
Yeah, that's what they're doing for podcasts. It's called Club Pod. And that's what he's doing, is he's facilitating, matching up podcast guests with podcast hosts, and people are getting picked up that way. So they get to pitch 2 minutes about what their story is, And then all these podcast hosts get to say, yeah, I want you on my show. I want you on my show. I want you on my show. Or here's
Like
some
American Idol. It's like American Idol on Clubhouse.
Yeah, that's the power of Clubhouse, so that you can do that. And I've heard of this. What time of day is that happening? I want to check it out.
He does it on a Tuesday at 2 p.m. Now he's Pacific time, so I'm assuming it would be 2 p.m. Pacific time. So
yeah, Tasia's in LA and he's in San Diego, so you guys are on the same.
Yeah, so he'd be in the same time.
What's his name? Is Steve? Because I think
Steve Olsher. Steve Olsher. I probably mentioned him to him. Mentioned him to you. And his Clubhouse thing. I might be wrong in this. I thought I seen it the other day, but that Clubbot or whatever, it's like 100,000 almost followers now. I don't know how he did it. Like,
and it's only been like a month. Well, I'm in his coaching program. So I'm really excited because our next group coaching call is all about Clubhouse. So I'm really excited about it because I want to learn how I can do it for authors. Right? Like,
yes. That's the thing, is like you can have real conversations about whatever you're passionate about, and it becomes another funnel. If you're a speaker, it becomes a funnel. If you want to get speaking engagement, if you're an author, because instead of setting up, I mean, this is like incredible, but imagine the amount of work that it took you to put this together, of how many days. Clubhouse, you say, okay, tomorrow post going to be there, and people just show up. You don't worry about your hair and your makeup. And it's an adjunct, but an easy, and not only you're getting people all over the world, right, coming in just like this, but the ease of it makes it so that people didn't necessarily have to sign up. They just saw it's going to be on the schedule. They go in and they just jump into that room. And it's just something that really is something definitely worth knowing about for whatever else you're doing as a funnel system to share in real time and engage. Because it's like, LinkedIn, right? You make a post. You still have to get your engagement. Then maybe someone DMs you. Then you set up a Zoom. Then you get to know somebody. They cook Clubhouse. You have a conversation. Wow, I like you. I like you. They DM you in your Instagram or your Twitter, and which also exponentially goes up. But then you've jumped 4 hurdles of this human connection, the voice-to-voice connection.
That's the only thing I don't like about Clubhouse is it doesn't have a chat feature. So I don't like that you have to connect with people on Instagram. And I'm not a big Instagram user. So I don't like that I now have to go watch my Instagram if people want to get in touch with me.
I'm assuming they're going to add that in at some point, or maybe it's by design, because then it helps you to, get more Instagram followers. I don't know. I can't keep up with it all. But the point is that it's really about what?
Yeah. No, that's the only thing I don't like about it. I wish they had a chat feature so I could just, chat with people right there on Clubhouse.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. They don't have LinkedIn either. You don't have LinkedIn connections. But it's still, again, what I love about it is that it's returning us to these kinds of conversations that we're all having right now. And people who are isolated, it's very COVID friendly in that so many of us feel disconnected. So many feel that we're not being heard. And in terms of public speaking, you get to practice just by raising your hand, your little icon hand, and going up to a stage and literally practicing. I have Give Great Voice sessions on Thursdays at 4 p.m. Eastern, if anyone wants to. I teach the skills of Give Great Voice, utilizing the skills of a voiceover actor, and I help people gain more confidence. And they come and, we talk about what their interests are, or how they're presenting, or what they're presenting, and I help coach them in real time how they can be more confident in their communication on Clubhouse and beyond. So that's something that, I didn't do right away, but now I'm doing that. And then I love joining other people's rooms. There's meditation rooms, or, whatever interests, the passions are there. But it's really been a gift for so many of us that feel that we're not connected. We're not, I'll tell one story. One of my dearest friends was an athletic instructor for her whole life, very well known. At 60, she became paralyzed from the waist down. She's literally lived, 4 years ago, 3 years. And her life has changed exponentially from this. I mean, of all careers, right? It was all about physicality. And she's been so full of grace. But I was able to give her an invitation for this Clubhouse. And I said, your life is going to change again. Because now it's not about what you look like. Nobody even sees what you look like and she's living in a home where, there's help, but most of the people are 20 years older than she is. But she's going to get to go back now and be herself and go in and talk all from the comfort of her room. But she's now not identified anymore. There's no, disability. And so for me, that's like one of those stories of, it can be really life-changing for people that are needing that connection.
Exactly.
To me, Clubhouse was made for you. Like it's truly, to me, like,
give great voice.
Yeah, give great voice platform, basically. So I can see
it's your audio brand.
Yeah,
that's what
you. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Kelly.
Corey, you could start up a Blue Talks room.
I've been thinking about that
regularly every day for 2 weeks or something before you can start up your own room.
Okay.
No, club. It's a club. I think for a club you have to start up. You have to do it every day for a couple of weeks or something. Is that 3?
I think it's only 3 times only. So I've done 3 weeks. You can do 3 times.
Start up your club. So that's why Steve has Club Pod. But you could do Club Blue Talks.
Yeah.
And then you'd be able to just say, okay, it's going to be every week at this time. We're going to have, various Blue Talk speakers come on and talk about their story or whatever. And it can be random too. Like, that's what I love about it. You can just open up a room and say, okay, we're going to talk about this. And then away you go. And then just invite people and they get in.
Yeah. It's so funny, Kelly, that you mentioned that, because I literally last night, because Steve and them finished the New Media Summit talking about Clubhouse, that I was literally thinking that last night. You know what I should do? And that's where my head was at. I should set it up for Blue Talks. And in fact, Tasia, I don't think I mentioned this to you, but Kelly, you may have seen it yesterday, but I also have set us up on Medium. So on Medium, as the blog site Medium, that basically we're going to have a Blue Talks Medium page where basically I'm going to take chapters, not the whole thing, but pieces from the books. And so, there's 100 posts that I can use with the 3 books. And basically we'll have a piece of it and then tell people where they can get the book, but also introduce the author. So that way we can highlight 100 and some Blue Talks authors on Medium. And so why can't that be in Clubhouse as well? So I was thinking about that just yesterday.
Well, you see, it's all meant to be. It's time to give great voice, to move, touch, and impact using our voices. And what a great time to be able to do that, because I think a lot of us, again, we've digitized our communication for so long. And now, this ability now to use our frequency to understand how we can rock that role, how we can move and inspire and take those words off the page and breathe and speak life into them by understanding the questions. I haven't even shared what the questions are. Can I share how people can try to understand what this concept of utilizing voiceover skills?
Yeah. I wanted to dive into some strategies and principles anyway. So that's a perfect segue to do so. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So this idea of, utilizing this skill of voiceover actor is really kind of thinking of ourselves as voice. I want to invite you to become the voiceover actor. And as a voiceover actor, you have to always ask yourself these 4 questions when you're going to rock your role. Who am I in this particular scene? Meaning, am I mother, friend, sister, Tasia, the authentic Tasia, or Corey, the authentic, but how many roles do you rock, right? Blue Talks author, a moderator, TED coach, Kelly author, speaker, teacher. These are all roles that we rock. So that's the who. Who am I speaking to? Meaning the relationship. Am I talking to my daughter to calm her down after a bad day? Am I, speaking to a prospective client and trying to motivate them? Am I talking on Amplify your message and trying to, again, inspire and create trust? That's the relationship. What do I want? Meaning, what's the success of that scene? And then how does my voice and tone support that intention? So who am I? Who am I speaking to? What do I want? And how does my voice and tone support that intention? And I always like to use Poison Ivy. She's one of the fun roles that I play in the Arkham games because she's such a simple character, but everyone knows her. She's the DC villainess. She's the mother to all nature, hater of humans, right? So that's the who. And she's known as a seductress. But why? It's not just because she's drawn pretty, because her venom lies in her lips. So she's not like a brute force. So that's the who, right? So who she's speaking to, her enemies, Batman's one of the most, well-known. What does she want? Well, she needs to seduce Batman to get him close enough to kiss him and kill him. And she might get Batman close enough if she were to say, hey, Batman, come over here. Versus, Batman, come here. That does not support the role and the intention, right? That's not a seductive quality, right? Would you say more of a repellent tone? Something that might make you back away, right? So there again, the example, the role, the tone, the moment. And that's something that we can apply in our real life roles as the speaker, as the podcaster, as the author. How many authors would like to be able to read their own books, but they don't feel that they can take those words off the page? Or even an Instagram live, it's the blah, 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 blah. But it's like, no, you got to live it. You got to act it. You got to tell the story. So that's, again, where this kind of novel lens can help people do that. And it's fun at the same time. They can channel their inner superhero. And who doesn't want to do that?
So it's interesting, Tasia. This is good timing because Kelly and I, as I mentioned, were both involved in the New Media Summit yesterday and Monday. And the premise there is people have like a two minute timeline, usually less, but let's just say maximum 2 minutes to pitch themselves as to why they should be on somebody's podcast. And where people struggled, I found, Kelly, you can back this up or disagree, but this time around, I've been to 5 or 6. I'm trying to remember which it was, but more so with the video ones than in person, people struggled with the memorizing or remembering their pitch. So, for example, in the in-person one, I never seen one person at the in-person one go up with a piece of paper and read. But yet on the video ones, the last 2, more so this one for some reason, everybody had like a thing on the screen and they were reading their pitch. And of course, then the podcasters were commenting like, I don't feel like your heart connecting with me. I don't feel like you're really there. It feels like you're in your head. And so to your point, that makes all the difference in the world, owning that role and owning like the role of the person pitching that podcaster. I mean, you need to really feel excited. You need to feel the energy of this story. Like there are people, and this is not a knock on anybody, and I would never say who said what, but there might be somebody that's talking about a traumatic story, but they're talking about it like, and then this person put me in this room and did this to me. Like, and it was like, there's no emotion behind it. So you're feeling like, if I have them on my show, is that what they're going to be like? But really, unfortunately, it was just that they were thinking, okay, I need to remember this 2 minutes and get it perfect. Right. And the easiest way is to look at a piece of paper. But what we tried to explain to people is it's your story. Nobody knows what you're going to say until you say it. And you are the one that owns that story. So we don't know if you screw up. So just embrace your story. Tell whatever. But I mean, you still have to, you do it in 2 minutes. So you have to be very intentional about it. But, what are the highlights of that story? So I love that you just talked about, owning that role, but then also understanding what you want from the role. Because as you said, if she said to Batman, get over here, Batman, it's not going to work.
He's going that way, right? He's going that way. But that's exactly right. Those stories, you have to tell the story. You have to remember. You have to evoke emotions, like because we have mirror neurons. If we feel it, you feel it. But if we're just saying, like, if I just say to you, Corey, I'm so excited to be here today. Thank you so much for having me, Kelly. This is really great. The words are there, right? Yep. Corey, I'm so excited to be here. Kelly, thank you so much for having me. You feel that, right? And so if you say, the same thing, you tell your story. And at that moment, I was in the hospital and I was scared and I was frightened. I'm feeling it as I'm saying it. But if I just say, at that moment, I was frightened and I was scared and I didn't know what to do, the words will not evoke. It'll just tell you here, but that just drops out because our attention's back to that 6. I think that's what grips us for staying longer. If we feel connected, if we feel like, what happens next? If we just be like, information, it's like, oh shit, I gotta check my phone. You've lost it because we really are emotionally. Our emotions are contagious, and if there are none, you're not gripping anybody. You're not bringing them on the story with you. And that's for podcast pitch, and it's for an authors, and it's for, everything, every role we play, especially when we're trying to present ourselves and get the investment or get the job. We really are performers in our life, and you can still be quite authentic. It's just understanding, like in this moment, I always say, do you want to motivate and inspire, calm and comfort, command and convey authority, be warm and inviting, or playful and silly? Our tone follows our intention. We just have to know what our intention is in this particular moment, in this particular scene of this particular role in our life.
It's so true. And I feel like a lot of people think I'm not a good storyteller or I can't learn it. And I mean, I go back to whenever I first started as a speaker, and I was not a comfortable speaker. So I was doing the same things. I would fall into the things that the people yesterday did pitching. And, I shared it earlier, Tasia, just before you came on, about one of the stories I share about me performing stand-up and not having the mic turned on. And, I look at that story, and the big thing I want to bring you to as you're listening to the story is I want you to clue in, maybe even 2 seconds after, but I want you to clue in that the reason they weren't laughing at my jokes is because I was so foolish as a comic and I was so new, I didn't even know to turn the mic on. So I have to hit that, and I use it through somebody else's eyes, the other guy that got me into this mess, but he says, "You idiot, we don't even have the mic turned on." And then I completely stop because I want the audience to know this is your cue. This is the meaning of this story. But imagine if I said, "You idiot, you don't have the mic turned on." And if you don't have the mic turned on, if I just rambled on there,
right,
you're not going to know that was your cue to laugh. You're probably not even going to catch the joke behind it. And if I don't hit it hard enough, you're not going to know. You're not going. The more harder I hit it, you don't even have the mic turned on. Then all of a sudden, you're triggered that, oh my gosh, because I said it in a different way. And so it's interesting. When I first started as a speaker, I didn't get that. But the point of this is you can learn that.
Yes. Yes, you can absolutely learn it. And it's because, again, there's all different forms of storytelling. You talk about the story, and mine is that special part of the performance, the coaching, how do we draw it out of you? Even if you think of yourself as shy or introverted, it's all in there. And I have different ways of coaching my clients to help them do that. But I do it in a very playful way. And I really try to tap into people's joy, the childlike part of us that was so free and uninhibited. That's the part that we can act those stories out because we didn't feel like, oh, what are they going to think of me? Or that imposter syndrome that so many of us suffer with, that at the core, we're unworthy. We're really, what do I have to say? They don't really want to know, what I have to say. So I'll just do my best and I'll just hope for the best. Part of what it means to give great voice, and I really come to feel like it's almost the most important part, is how we speak to ourselves, how we give great voice to ourselves, because so many of us will tear ourselves down and say, I'm stupid or I'm unworthy or what do I know? And then we have to go present ourselves instead of saying, I believe in myself. I have something to say. My voice deserves to be heard. I have an amazing story. I can't wait to tell it. I can't wait to tell it. I'm going to be great. So I really believe, and I use the metaphor, that our brain is like a hard drive, and most of us are operating on 40-year-old programs, and we haven't updated the software because all those programs, those subconscious programs, from 0 to 6, 0 to 7, where our parents and their parents and every one of us, and I'm a parent, so I know about screw ups, did the best they could, but we took in information and that became the hard drive, and we need to software update, which is through affirmations, through understanding, does that serve me any role to think of myself? Does it serve my role now and my mission, all these beliefs, all my conscious beliefs are I'm going to do this and this and this. And then, no, you're not. No, you're not. You're nothing. You're nobody. Become the witness. Excuse me, that doesn't really help me anymore. So I'm just going to put that aside and use my voice to override it, because thoughts are fast and furious. There are 70 to 60,000 thoughts a day unchecked, and most of them are 80% negative from the day before and the day before and the day before. So I say to people, use that awareness and say, no, I am beautiful. I am powerful, or I forgive myself. Rough moment right there. But again, speak to yourself, but only nicely, and say it out loud. Nobody's listening. Say it out loud. And I actually have a free affirmation meditation app to that end called Haven. You know about it, Haven Guided Affirmations. So I actually help people with a tool. I call it, speaking this language of self-love, which is very awkward for most people. But, can you learn French in your head, Kelly? No. Can you learn, Chinese in your head? No, you have to say it aloud. So giving great voice to ourselves builds that confidence over and over again. And then we can go out and we have so much more bandwidth and we can take those risks and be willing to put ourselves out there and give ourselves to and be our best selves. And that's another component that I think is so important, is what are we saying to ourselves?
Well, it's funny. I didn't have a chance to look quick enough, so I'll see it later. But I was going to show your app because I have it on my phone, but I was trying to find it, but I get too many apps right now.
It looks like a lighthouse. It looks like a little pink lighthouse. Haven guided affirmations, and it's something. I think Google's having an issue with it right now, but it's on Apple and it should be back up on Google. And it's just broken down into 10-minute masteries, confidence, health, wealth. And it's just, I call it a be kind to your mind app. And right now, with what we're all going through, who doesn't need more of that?
100%. And it's funny because you're the perfect person to be doing the affirmations with us and guiding us through it, because you're the voiceover girl. I mean, you have the skill. And so so one of the things that I like about it is affirmations to me are meant to be peaceful and soothing. And within your app, you have that peaceful and soothing voice. So that's why I say you're the perfect person to do it.
Do you want to hear a story about that, though? There's a story there. I have a story.
Absolutely, I'd love to hear it.
So the story on that was I co-wrote this, and I didn't have the music bed, and I read harder than I've ever worked on any voiceover job, because voiceovers are pretty short and sweet. 4 hours is a lot of work unless you're doing an audiobook. So I co-wrote each of these masteries. I voiced each one, and then I got the bed of it on the app, and I listened to it, and I was like, uh-oh. Hi, I'm Tasia Valenza. It's so great to have you. Health is blah, 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 blah. And now we're going to relax and meditate. And I was like, what was my role? What was my role? Gosh, if people have 5 minutes from the minute they touch it, hear it, I have to create that ambiance, that sound, that soothing, that calming. And so I had to go back and re-record every single of the 49 masteries.
Oh, no.
So there's my own story of like, I didn't serve the role because I wasn't sure. I didn't have, I didn't know, this is a brand new thing. You're making a meditation app. And I was like, I'll just be all fun. And you can hear I'm a very vibrant person for the most part, but matched with the music and the recognition that they might not even be willing to get to that because they're not relaxed from my energetic effervescent. I'm evoking more of an, So anyway, that's the story that I it's wonderful. And the number one adjective is soothing, but it was a hard fought, and I had to go and learn my own skill.
But that's the whole thing, right? You learned your own lesson and your own skill. And the bigger thing is you were able to do it, because so many people, what is that terrible analogy? What do they say? Throw the baby out with the bathwater?
Right. I could have just said, forget it. Or I'm just going to leave it as is and screw it. Everyone has to just suck it up.
You know what? You can joke about that, but there's a lot of people that would have done that. Looked at 49 masters and said, we'll see how people respond to it. I mean, there's a lot. So I applaud you for actually saying, no, I got to start over again to serve the end person.
Well, that was that's ultimately what we are trying to do. Who are we serving? And how can we do it in a way that really gives what we want, our gifts? That's what, to give great voice when we do it well, it's a gift to the speaker because we feel that love that we're giving out. And it's a gift to the receiver because we know it's hitting them and emotionally connecting. And it's a gift to anyone who witnesses it, which is why we love YouTube videos of pets, and we love to feel good. So all those dopamine and the oxytocin, it's actually going between all of us, the speaker. And that's another reason why I love to encourage people that their messages matter and their voices matter. And when I get nervous and I think, gosh, and I do, we would never know it, but I do, like, do I really have something to say? And I think, you know what? Take it off of me. It's not about me. It's who am I here? And who are here to serve? And then who needs to hear my voice today and my story, Kelly? Everybody has that. And so I really want to encourage people too, that when we take it off of our ego, the fear of being rejected, because there's always going to be someone who doesn't dig it. That's just the way it is. And I have one more metaphor if I can share it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So my therapist gave me this once when I was having one of those really low moments of like, well, she didn't like me and I just doesn't understand. Like, it felt so bad to me. She said, well, Tasia, if you were an ice cream, what would be your favorite flavor? And I was like, oh gosh, anything Ben and Jerry's, right? Super New York chunk fudge, right? She said, what is it about it? I said, oh, it's delicious and it's creamy. She said, you love it? I said, I love it. She said, okay, great. You are New York super chunk fudge. I'm like, I am. Okay, great. She said, you're delicious, right? She said, well, what's your least favorite? I said, I hate cherry Garcia. Hate it. She's like, what do you hate? I was like, I hate cherries. I hate it in my ice cream. I don't like fruit in my ice cream. Ew. She said, well, guess what? Cherry Garcia is delicious to millions of people. And Cherry Garcia doesn't know or care if you like it or not. It's still delicious. So she's like, I said, yes. She said, so you are New York super chunk fudge. You may not be everybody's cup of tea, but you are delicious. And so that's one of the affirmations I make my students do. So Corey, what would be your ice cream? Your favorite ice cream?
I got a new favorite. If I can add a new favorite now, or
please, it's your choice.
I'm trying to think of it's a toffee. I'm trying to remember the second part of the name, but let's just say it's toffee fudge. It's similar to that.
Fudge. So here's the affirmation. I am toffee fudge and I am delicious. Go for it.
I am toffee fudge and I am delicious.
Yeah. And Kelly, what would be your favorite?
Mine is orange sorbet.
Okay, so can you rock it? I am orange sorbet and I am delicious. We can even do the power pose.
I am orange and I am delicious.
Woo! So it doesn't matter if somebody doesn't like orange, because I want to tell you something, Kelly. I hate orange sorbet. I dislike
orange sorbet.
But you are still what? Are you still delicious?
I'm still delicious.
Right? So can people please take that? Isn't that a wonderful way to think about, like, you're not going to please everybody, but as long as you know that you are delicious, that's okay.
I so dig that, Tasia. And we have just a few minutes left, but I wanted to add one thing. You'll appreciate this, I think. And then I want to ask how people can work with you in that important side of things as well. You've given us so many amazing tips, by the way. But one of the things I wanted to share with you, and Kelly, I didn't share this with you either, and you may not have had a chance to watch it because we've both been pretty busy. But John Lee Dumas, I had him on with me yesterday as a separate interview from the one Kelly was doing. And I just remembered something else he talked about, the idea of you're not for everybody. Jay Bohar has this great called Hug Haters. And so that's what made me to bring it up to John. And Jay Bohar's book, The Idea of Hug Your Haters, is when somebody hates on you, love on them, essentially. And so John said, he shared a story that he was doing an interview live on maybe YouTube, I think, or something. And he had a hater come on. And he said, look, John Lee Dumas, you're nothing but a BS artist and a fraud. And that's what the guy said in the middle of his interview live with somebody else. So, of course, a lot of the people started kind of attacking that guy. Like, how dare you say that he does so much for everybody? And John said, hold it. And he shared it with me, so I'm going by what he shared it. But basically, hold it, everybody, whatever the guy's name was. I forget. He said that, like, user Bubba Bear 216 or something. He said, the bottom line is I've learned over time, hurt people hurt people. So this isn't about me. This isn't about me at all, guys. And basically, he changed the narrative and said, this isn't about me. And he said, whatever his name was again, Baba Bear 221, what I want to do, if you're still listening, is I want to put it out there. Email me at john@johnleedumas.com. And I want to send you the Freedom Journal for free, the Mastery Journal for free, my new book for free, because you need it, my friend. And he said, I don't mean that in a derogatory way. He said, there's stuff in there that I think will help you. He said, that you're hurting and I want to help you. But what a powerful way to deal with somebody hating on you and calling you a fraud.
Yes, that's amazing. And what was did it turn him around, or was he able to, like, literally be vulnerable enough to, or did he just, I'm curious.
His last part to sharing the story is he said, I haven't got the email yet from them.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, that's how genuine he is. It would be easier to just say, yeah, I got the email from the guy and sent them stuff. How would we ever know? But he's very authentic, right? At some point, the story might become the guy reached out to me. At some point, it won't. But I love that he was willing, in front of all those people who were willing to defend him right away,
right,
to kind of say, you know what, guys, this isn't about me. This is about something bigger than me. And he said, I think he said something like, to my knowledge, I've never even served this person. Like, it's not about me here today. Right. Maybe and let's be honest, maybe they get screwed over by somebody. Maybe their family get ripped off by somebody. There's a guy, and I'm not trying to knock him, but there's a guy named Kevin Trudeau. I don't know if you guys remember the miracle cures they don't want you to know about.
Yes.
And I don't know if you know this, side note completely, but he's in jail now.
No.
Because, well, for 10 years. He's going to be out soon, I think. But because the FDA, or not the FDA, whoever it is, like the FCC or whatever, that does all the advertising things, they kept going after him saying you can't make these claims. And he just didn't listen. So what I'm saying is it could have been something like that. Like he used to have an infomercial. And people would buy all the stuff from him. And some of it was probably, like I'm talking to Kevin Trudeau now, some of it was legit, some of it maybe not. My point is he could have ripped up by somebody like that. And saw him go to jail and then said they're all like this.
Right.
You know, and just thought, and he would probably say the same thing to Tony Robbins. How many people don't like the cherry Garcia that is Tony Robbins, but there's many more that love the chocolate fudge that's Tony Robbins.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, that's the thing is like, you know, we are humans and we have likes and dislikes. But what we feel is so often, you know, again, that's that inner child within us. I think that so often the wounded child, that so often we just, you know, didn't think we were enough. And so when someone doesn't like us, approve of us, we feel that they're right, you know, that there must be that they're right. But we forget that, you know, that we are still our beautiful selves. And again, that comes down to that self-talk, like that self-soothing of how we would take care of our best friend or our child. And say, you know, that's what I say. We can be our own compassionate companion, the soothing, that feels really bad right now, you know, but it's okay. It's not about you. I can talk to myself, or I can be my, you know, my confidence coach and say, screw it. I love myself. You know, it's like, that's the thing. By the way, I keep using this because it's the power pose. And that's another thing that I love to share. Amy Cuddy's famous TED Talk. Power posing is funny, again, you know, the superhero thing that I love to talk about, voiceover, this classic pose of Wonder Woman, Superman, or the V for victory. When you stand in this pose for 2 minutes or more, you raise your testosterone, which is your confidence hormone, your power hormone, and you lower the cortisol levels, that stress hormone, the part that says, that's the sympathetic nervous system that comes in, or I'm not enough, or I'm afraid, or I can't speak. So another thing you can do, again, in the mirror when you're saying your affirmations, I have and I am, every morning, because I have this thing on my wall. Today is an incredible day. Success, prosperity, and abundance in many different forms have naturally found their way into my life today. I gratefully enjoy their manifestations, and it goes on. But I say this every day in the mirror. I am beautiful. I am powerful. It's on my, because I know if I just look at it, it's like, oh, that's a nice download. Did I take it in? No. Stand in the mirror, power pose, and rock it with confidence. You know, affirmations don't work if you say it without intention. I like myself. Yeah, I love myself. Yeah, sure you do. Sure you do. It's the same thing. You have to say it with intention and conviction and passion. Whatever you say after I am or I have, with intention and conviction and consistently, tells your future. So what do you want to say? Be careful.
I am super excited that to have you on today. It's such a great experience. I'm curious, and then I just want to ask you, Tasia, how we can learn more as we bring things to a close. But when you said you say that every morning, are your kids and your husband, are they used to that? Like, you said you say it out loud. Do you say it out loud with them in earshot, or do you do it by yourself?
Oh, they know I'm crazy. No, it's in my bathroom and I'm upstairs, so they can. My husband, I'll try to get him to do it. Sometimes he does it, sometimes he doesn't. But I have to remind myself because, you know, it's there and I'm like, I teach this stuff. Sometimes I think like, I have to remember to listen to the affirmation meditation app because I need calming too. Sometimes like, oh, I know this. So it's downloaded. I'm human. I get anxious. So I kind of force myself. But yeah, they're used to me being nutty. By the way, I do recommend this to really empower your kids when they're young, before they start thinking you're really uncool. Because if you can get kids, right, the program from 0 to 7, and they get to rock their inner superhero, like while you're home with them, who are you? I'm Superman. I'm Wonder Woman. Okay, so what's your affirmation? I am powerful. If you can get them to start liking themselves early and affirming themselves, so many less therapy bills later.
I love that. What's the name of the girl that does the?
Jessica's affirmations is one of the biggest YouTube videos. I put it in the Blue Talks. Jessica's affirmations. She was in the mirror. I love my family. I love my health. I love myself. I love my hair. I love my life. And like this is 30 million people. Why? Because we love it when kids do that. We think it's so adorable. But somehow as grown-ups, we're not allowed to do that. What? Why? Why? And by the way, the science says it works, like this power pose, but you add the affirmation, the give great voice component, and you channel that inner confidence superhero. Maybe you have to borrow from Wonder Woman or Superman. You will feel it. And by the way, last thing, woo-woo. Okay. You know where I first heard this about affirmations? 1987 or 8 or 9, Brian Tracy, business coach of the world, psychology of achievement. You get out of bed and you say, I feel terrific. I feel terrific. I feel terrific. And then he said, you go in the mirror. He didn't know about power posing at the time, because if he did, he would say it. I like myself. I like myself. I like myself. This is a business coaching, the psychology of achievement. So when I tell you that it's not woo-woo and there's science behind it, Brian Tracy is one of the foremost, Tony Robbins, but I mean, let's go even further. Brian Tracy. So my point is that it really does work. But the element of believing yourself, as Amy Cuddy would say, don't fake it till you make it. Fake it till you become it. Who snaps?
Wow. So that's the perfect, I can't do better than that. Tasia, how can we learn more? How can we connect with you, learn more? Is there a hub? Where would you send people?
Thank you. Well, I'm on TasiaValenza.com. That's my voiceover site. And then the Give Great Voice is more of the coaching. When I train with people, I'm at LinkedIn. You can find me there to DM me, or Instagram. I'm pretty much on all of the I do Facebook, but LinkedIn is probably one of the best professionals. And you can find the TEDx talk, Give Great Voice, again, which you were so instrumental to kind of check it out. And I'm totally findable. And I'd love to be able to help you rock your role and take those words off the page and help you play your roles with more confidence and captivation and compassion and consideration. I love those C's.
Tasia, so amazing. I just put your website in the Give Great Voice website in the comments. I couldn't recommend you more greatly than I will right now, to say that, you're somebody who walks your walk, talks your talk, and delivers. I mean, anybody that I've seen that's worked with you or talked about working with you says you're the real deal. And in my experience, you're the real deal. And so if people are wanting to take their voice to the next level, they're wanting to communicate better, some people are terrified to be in front of the media, and that could just be in a podcast. The pitching we were talking about yesterday, I mean, if it was the format, if I was allowed to pitch you there and say, you need to reach out to Tasia, I would have pitched you in front of 70 people that could have reached out to you. So
I just want to get on their podcast. I'll have to pitch myself. I'll have to find out how to do that so I can, because that would be fun to be able to talk about it.
100%. Well, and you know what? At some point you should go on the New Media Summit, because you'd be a perfect fit there. So many podcasters would bring you on, and these are really big podcasters with really big followings. But in the interim, I just want to tell people, reach out to Tasia, look up her website, look at the services she offers, and I'm telling you could do much worse than Tasia Valenza.
Thank you. I take that as a great compliment. And remember to love yourself and your ice cream, and to just remember that you are delicious no matter what.
Absolutely. And I'll add too, you can tell that wasn't the thing that Tasia paid me to say, because I was all over the map, because it was in real time.
I appreciate you. You've been such a tremendous gift to me, Corey. I want to just shout you out, because again, you saw when I first came to you, I was like, I have this TEDx and I'm dying to give it. And you were like, okay, I'm going to help you. And you totally did. And then some. So I wouldn't really be here if it weren't for you, literally. So I'm just going to express my gratitude to you, and thank you so much. And Kelly, you've always inspired me with your story. So to continue to be in your sphere and to share, it's truly my honor. So thank you so much for giving me a place to share my passion, and again, to have been one of the greatest supporters of it.
Thank you so much, Tasia. So humble, and I'll call it a to be continued, because this is just another interview in the process of our journey. So
Clubhouse, next one on Clubhouse.
well, we'll be circling back on Clubhouse either later this week or early next.
Love
and
it.
I'm going to get you to help introduce me to Clubhouse. So let's make some magic happen.
Good. And I want to just tell everyone, go out there and give great voice, because your voice matters and it deserves to be heard.
Awesome, my friend. To be continued. I so appreciate you. We'll let you run. And thank you ever so much as always.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Tasia.
Awesome stuff. Amazing, Kelly. So we're right at the end of the day here. We went a few minutes over, which is I had to, because what Tasia just shared was so powerful. And if you look at what she shared in the last 15 minutes, I wouldn't want to leave that out. So I'm glad we went slightly over. Having said that, she shared so much great insight, and I love the ice cream analogy or metaphor. I thought that was so cool.
Yes. I've heard of that before with can't remember their name, Christina something, and she had her son on, and he talks about peanut butter and barbecue sauce, and he does a little demonstration about that, like, I love barbecue sauce, right? And his friend says, well, I hate barbecue sauce. And it's like, but that doesn't mean I'm still not a great person, just because he doesn't like barbecue sauce and I do, right? And so it's a cute little message. I love it.
Yeah, so cool. And that, have you watched the Jessica thing she mentioned?
No, I haven't.
You have to watch that. You'll fall in love with this little girl. Like I love my whole house. And she's standing on top of it. Looks like the
bathroom counter. Oh yeah. That was like quite a few years ago when that came out. Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah,
awesome.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I mean, Tasia, if you watch her Blue Talk, it's like she has it right in the middle of her Blue Talk. She got permission to do it. We actually inserted it in, like, so it's, you should check out her Blue Talk, and of course her TEDx talk as well. But she's the real deal. I don't do on the spot, like on the fly recommendations very often, as you know, Kelly. I do the exact same with you. But and that's why it was no plan, and there's no kind of straight through line. It's just off top of my head. But honestly, Tasia's one of those people. I think everybody sees that anyway when she's on with us, that this person lives this inside and out.
Yeah, exactly. She's a beautiful person for sure. I love today. It seemed like, there was lots of passion today. Like, we always have passion, but it seemed like it was just kicked up another level. Right?
Yeah, there was some energy in the air, and maybe it was the three of us together too. Our energy combined is what kept hitting the internet there for the first part. I don't know what was. I mean, like I said, I'm wired in. Like, it shouldn't be on my side, but at the same time, if all of us are freezing, it would seem like it's on my side. But anyway, it's really weird. Okay, now that's so weird. So now, as we're talking about the Wi-Fi, I just tried to unplug mine and plug it back in. But as we're talking about the connection, then Kelly freezes up. So hopefully you guys. Oh, right. I said, how weird is that? We're talking about the connection, and then that happens.
Someone's playing tricks on us. The universe is playing tricks on us.
100%. But yeah, so I mean, you're right. There's so much great energy today. And at the same time, so many nuggets. And I mean, I couldn't even go back over them all because I'd have to go listen again and make notes. But so much insight you could take from today. Like, I love how when we start talking to a certain guest and something we haven't covered around the book side, even though we've done this now 3 times, meaning we've brought like 60-ish people on, and there's still new stuff. For example, with Darlene, we talked about the cover part and how important that is to be in tune with everything else and all that. We haven't talked about that before. And we
exactly. And it was cool how, she used a focus group to, get the right cover and the right title. And, we talked about that with James Redfield with Celestine Prophecies, same type of thing, where he got a focus group involved. And I think what's cool about it too is that it's not just a matter of putting together a cover and putting together a book and away you go. There is a lot of thought. There's a lot of process. There's a lot that goes into it. And if you want to make a best-selling book, these are the types of things that you need to consider.
Absolutely. And what's really cool is Darlene talked really a lot about the cover. And to your point about James, when James talked about it, he talked about the inside, like the writing, how he used a focus group for the writing of the book. And she talked about how she used it for the cover. So it's kind of cool because we covered both sides of that. And then if we go back to Rob, Rob talking about, it's funny because there's been like synergies like Garcia, Rob Garcia. I don't know if you caught that or not, but we had Rob on earlier, and on the media side, he gave some great strategies for how to make sure that you're standing out in media. And I love how he's honest about the fact that you could easily develop and sort of pitch a way that you could turn it on autopilot, but he said, really, you're never going to have results on autopilot. So he really believes what he's saying, because it would be easy for him to say, oh yeah, there's a way, I'm putting out a program to do that, because you could sell a program to people, but you're probably not going to have the results that you can have if it's personalized pitch in the media. So I'm glad, he's another person that's very fully transparent. So I'm glad about that.
Yeah, Rob is a no bullshit kind of guy. Like, I've been watching him on Facebook, right? And his dating stories are funny too. But so it's kind of funny that we brought that into the picture, right? Is the crazy dating stories that going on in this world. So, but yeah.
So, the one thing with somebody like that, you also know if you're on his Facebook page as well and you're going out on a date with him, you could become the next story. Your name might not be mentioned, but you could become the next story. And it's the same thing about songwriters, right? I've written songs about 5 or 6 girls that I've been with. The Your Jacob song that I turned into a video is about a girl that I dated for a short amount of time. So I think if you date a songwriter or you date somebody that posts stuff online about their experiences, you probably know that you could be the next one.
I actually have some guys that have said that to me, and I actually honestly believe that there could be some reasons why some guys don't want to date me, is because they're worried their story is going to become in my book. And one guy actually, when I broke up with him, this actually happened this fall. When I broke up with him, he said, "Oh, great. So now you're going to go put this in a book?" And I was like, oh, "No, I'm not going to put this in a book." Right?
Yeah.
Dude, no.
Well, and at the end of the day, in my opinion, if you're not saying the person's name and you're sharing, not everybody's, I guess I'll say, mature enough to get this, but when you do that, you're helping somebody in the future. You're impacting a life. You're sharing a story that could help somebody. I wrote that song. The Your Jacob song wasn't necessarily to help somebody. Maybe in some ways it was. In some ways it was, I guess, it was the premise of the Your Jacob song I'm talking about. You can see the videos on YouTube. But the premise was this girl I dated for a very short spell. She liked Jacob. She liked all the qualities of Jacob on Twilight. Yeah. And I tried to become Jacob to fit into the relationship, and ultimately realized I had to be Edward. I'm more Edward than Jacob. And so that's the premise of the song. So there is a message in for other people to learn. Don't try to become somebody else. At the end of the song, I write, in the end of the video, I write in a note, I'm not going to change. I'm just me. And then she comes and reads the notes and goes, almost like, oh, he wouldn't change for me. But the premise was, and then at the end of the video, the very end, I'm driving away in a truck, and it has the words "me" on it at the license plate.
Right.
And so there is a bigger message. But my point is, I wrote the song probably to get it out, meaning to get it out of my system after we didn't work out. But the message was about don't try to change for somebody else. And so you would hope that somebody you're with would be mature enough to say, well, that's a good message for others to learn. And if they're not saying my name, very few people are ever going to know it was about me. The interesting part is the girl that I wrote that song about, she wasn't sure if it was about her. And I went to visit her mother. I was still talking to her mother, and her mother said, I think that's about her. Is that about her? And I said, yeah. And she said, oh, she loves it. She thought it was about her. And so the thing is, she was so cool that somebody wrote a song about her, whether it was in a positive nature or not. I didn't say anything negative about her as a person. I just talked about our experience together. But yeah, the long story short of it is, if I was with somebody and they, were going to write a story about me, or if they did stand-up comedy and they were going to tell a joke that got laughs forever, and when people went to watch them after work, it took them out of their crappy day, I'd be happy that I was helping that. But not everybody's there yet.
Yeah, not everybody can see the value in the story, or they don't see the behind the scenes thing. Something that happened to me, what I found interesting, I can't go into the whole details about it, but one of the stories I said was that, I have to be careful how I say this, how I word it.
We're on live, so be careful.
Yeah, I know. But anyways, the backstory is one of the girls came to me and she said, "Oh my God, I just loved your story. It empowered me so much." Well, she's actually in a wheelchair. And she's like ended up with a virus, woke up one day in Vegas. She went to Vegas for a holiday, woke up in the morning and is in a wheelchair. A virus attacked her when she was like 30 years old. And one of the reasons that she loves my story so much is that my story gives her hope that she too can have a beautiful life, right? Or that she too can be inspirational, or that she also can have an, like go somewhere with her life, even though she's in a wheelchair. And, and that one day she too will find, that man of her dreams. Right. And so my story inspires her to keep moving forward in life. And that's the beautiful part of the story, is a lot of times we don't hear those stories of how we impact people.
Absolutely. So true. Yeah. And when we do hear those stories, I mean, it reminds us of what we're doing. And I mentioned to you, you have to be a good receiver as well. And when somebody shares those stories, I'm receiving. If they're sharing the story with me about how something I shared impacted them, I'm receiving then. And at the same time, what they might not realize is I'm going to tell myself that story internally at some point before I go do a talk or something else to get me in the right mind frame. So and then that impacts another audience. So by them sharing the story with me, it allows me to hopefully impact another audience while also receiving that gratitude of them sharing with me that my story somehow impacted them.
I love that. And like, even, how Global TV named me and Spencer as some of the 2 top most inspirational people of 2020 on Christmas Day. Well, it didn't really hit me. It was like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. But when I went to go watch the video clip that they showed, I was talking about, the Scarface girl, right? Like this picture, I showed this picture in the video, right? Scarface, how somebody called me Scarface in grade 5. Well, right after I'm talking about that, they show a little 11-year-old girl saying, "I'm so glad I got to hear Kelly speak, because I now feel beautiful about myself."
Wow.
And so that is the part of the story that hit me. That was the part that hit me to my core, that said, okay, I'm going to keep doing what I do. I don't care about the people. Well, it's not that I don't care about the people who hate me. It's their mess, like what's going on in their lives doesn't matter to me as much as that little 11-year-old girl that says, I now feel beautiful about myself.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's the power of the story. And I think that's the overall message of today, is how powerful our stories are. And a lot of times we don't hear how powerful they are, because we don't hear all the time how we've impacted other people. Right. So, yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that you're right. The key message today, the takeaway is, there's so many nuggets today. I mean, even stuff that, again, in whatever that it's been 60 some interviews, or I guess 60 some interviews probably that we've done with this event. We're still hearing stuff that even though I know inherently, like for example, the book and how important it is to have it all congruent. I did that with my book, but I never thought of sharing that with people. And so, now today that reminded me of the importance of sharing that. And so I love how every time something new comes in, and I think underlying or overriding message today was the power of story. So on that note, Kelly, I know we went a bit over time today, but I want to thank you so much for joining me once again today. For everybody watching, as you've heard, as far as the contest, the question was asked a couple times, how do you enter? If you go on and ask any question or post or comment, you've just entered. And when I say enter, I mean to win a chance to win one of the books. And so Darlene offered up 2, Woody offered up 2, I offered to buy 2 of Woody's, that's 6. And then I haven't figured out this yet. I'll decide by tomorrow, but I'm going to offer up a couple of these probably as well. And so you'll probably have, like always, 10 to 15 chances to win a book just by watching us over the next couple of days. And we're not done yet. Go ahead. Sorry, Kelly.
And commenting. We want you to comment.
Comment. And I mean, even if you decide to share, which is awesome, but if you do decide to share, make sure you comment when you share, so that way we'll still see your comment. Include it. I'm going to add two, just really quickly. We're not done yet. We have 2 more days. Tomorrow, one of the guests is already been pre-recorded, and so I think I'm going to air him as the first guest. And Kelly and I will work this out in the back end, but air him as the first guest, so that we'll actually be coming live tomorrow a little bit later, probably along the lines of maybe 12:15 Eastern, roughly. So a little bit later. And our first guest, so the one that was already interviewed, that'll air, is Sean Douglas. He's a podcaster. He's a veteran. He's got this great story. He's building this really large business while finishing off in the military, like finishing off his service. And he's got this really cool story. And I already did the interview, so I can tell you he's got lots of great insight for people about building their message, their brand, etc. And then we're going to interview Jonathan Green, who he's got this really cool story. I've known him because I've worked with him a couple times, but we've never met online yet, like visually. But he does a lot of book giveaways where he brings, and it's a really cool concept, so I'm super excited to talk about this, but where he brings like 12 authors together, and then they all offer their books. And basically, he sets them up on a page, and people can opt in to get the free books. And if they opt in for your book, then that person gets added to your email list. And so he's helping everybody all at the same time build their email list, while obviously building his email list in a big way. And it's just a cool way to leverage your book. So it'll be cool to have him on. And then we have Brad Richard, who's the man at 50. He's got a podcast, a book, etc., around one brand. So it'll be cool to talk about that side of things. Rebecca Whitman we have, who's going to talk about, a couple things, but she has a powerful and big podcast. So we'll talk about podcasting. And then just really quickly, on Friday, I'm excited about as well, we have Trisha Brook, who I met at New Media Summit, the very first one I went to live. And she's actually she's a TEDx curator. Like she's actually coached people. You're familiar with her as well, right?
Yeah, because she coached me for my second TEDx talk.
I remember you telling me that, yes. So I'm excited to have her on. She has her own brand now, and she actually has her own branded talks as well. So we'll have lots of ground to cover around speaking. We have Greg and Antonia Lee Van Becker, who are going to come on, and they're building some businesses on the back end that we'll talk about. And Jessie Mendina, who I met through Instagram, and she reached out to bring me on her podcast, but I wanted to bring her on to the show as well. And she's really heavily into the social media side of branding. And then 2 last people, Rosalind Fung, who Kelly, you know quite well. And Rosalind's the real deal. And why I wanted to bring Rosalind on is she just started down the road of podcasting. I think she's probably 4 or 5 months in. And I'd love to kind of talk to somebody early on in the experience to talk about her experience thus far. But she's been getting really big traffic and listenership on her podcast. And she's on the Ohm network, which I don't know anybody else on that network. It's a radio network. So it'll be cool to talk about her experiences. And then finally, we have Ed Andrew, who's a business coach from Australia, who also has a really big, long-running podcast. So I kind of just covered the surface. That tells you we have a lot of amazing guests still to come. And we're going to cover a lot of ground around speaking and podcasting and writing still to come. I would say the next couple of days, as I look at the schedule, we're going to lean more towards podcasting and speaking, but we'll still have a bit about the writing. So you're still whether you came for writing, speaking, or podcasting as a way to amplify your message, you're still going to have more to come. So we still got lots left, Kelly.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to the next 2 days.
Awesome stuff. Well, Kelly, it's always a pleasure. Thank you, everybody. As I always finish off with, you can find more at bluetalks.com if you want to learn more about Blue Talks as a whole. If you want to learn how you can get involved in Blue Talks in the future, feel free to reach out to me. But again, bluetalks.com. And Kelly, maybe you can remind me tomorrow that I want to tell people a little bit more throughout the day to, if they want to share this stream and to comment, so we make sure that we put them in the book contest.
Yep, absolutely. We'll do that. Okay,
awesome.
everybody.
Thank you so much.